Tondal thought that his life had been a dog's life. The thought weighed heavily on his mind, reflecting all the bitterness of the years he had lived. He was 60 years old. He had devoted 42 years of his life to the criminal world. Hangzhou was like heaven on earth, and he had every chance to live like an emperor. If only he hadn't gotten involved with those people and they ended up behind bars. If only his recklessness hadn't cost him his leg. His brother Wang Chil warned him that if he didn't change his ways, a knife in the back would be his fate. Modesty saves. His brother died, shielding his friend with his body and shouting at him to run, leaving the world without himself. Tondal didn't understand. Why did Van Chil, who taught him to live modestly, rush to save him at the cost of his own life? He collapsed in the snow and realized that living modestly was not for his soul. Tondal lay on the ground and thought about his crumbling body. He thought about his past, full of regrets, and felt that he was fed up with it. He stared into the void. A gangster from the sticks like him couldn't expect any other ending. He smiled to himself. Well, it was a great day to die. Tondal woke up to a shout. "Lazy bastard, sleeping on your first day at work?" He barely had time to come to his senses when a sharp blow with a broomstick on his back made him cry out. A voice shouted furiously that it was time to get his act together and that his brother would be arriving soon, so he needed to clean everything up quickly. He looked around distractedly, his memory returning to the moment when he closed his eyes on the mountain. Tondal blinked, not understanding what was happening, and looked at himself with slight anxiety. He looked down and realized with difficulty that his leg was back where it should be, his body trembling. A mocking thought flashed through his mind that he had frozen like a statue again, and the threat of a broom hung in the air. His gaze fell on the screaming, familiar face from Guanghua Street, the very same rogue Cho Pyongdo. Cho Pyongdo looked younger, and Tondal felt as if he had returned to the very day they first met. Then he realized that he too was young, his skin smooth and soft, without wrinkles, as if time had erased the past years. Cho Pyongdo flew into a rage and attacked Tondal with a broom, yelling that he was looking for death. Tondal, feeling the pain, realized that what was happening was not a dream at all, and remembered that Cho Pyongdo had said he was at work. This was the very place where he had spent his entire life. The office in Gwanghwamun, solving problems. In his past life, he was part of an organization called Hyokdo. These people ruled the shadowy world of martial arts. They charged protection money, laundered money, and collected debts at night. In short, nothing special, just ordinary crooks. There are also ranks within Hyokdo, and the place where he is now is considered the very bottom. He smiled to himself, thinking that this was the office that solved all problems. He thought that this was a bunch of unremarkable weaklings who didn't even know how to collect debts. Tondal realized with surprise, did he return to his 18 years of age? A man entered the room and asked curiously what the guys were doing. Tondal recognized his brother Vanchil, and unable to contain his emotions, hugged him joyfully. Vanchil asked Tondal in confusion what was wrong with him, and Tondal, unable to hide his joy, said that it was him. His brother asked why the newcomer was behaving this way, and Cho Pyongdo said with a smile that he was feeble-minded and needed to be educated. Vanchil asked anxiously how much he had beaten him, and noted that at this rate, he would not come to his senses, but would become even more stupid. He then left the conversation and asked if the journals had been filled out. Cho Pyongdo said irritably that it wasn't that simple. Then he asked the newcomer if he could read. The newcomer calmly replied that he could. He asked irritably if the newcomer knew at least 100 classical characters. Tondal replied that he knew all the classics and more. His brother asked in surprise if he really knew all the characters, and if they weren't too difficult to write. Tondal thought that he himself had ordered him to learn all this, so that he would not have to expel him later for becoming a beggar. His brother approvingly told Tondal to put the reports in order, and Pendo showed him what to do, but he refused help. Pendo yelled at Tondal, demanding that he pull himself together, but he replied that if he couldn't handle it, he would take responsibility. He said mockingly that it was too early for the fool to answer unless he was ready to risk his life. Tondal was ready for anything. He admitted that when working in the criminal world, putting your life on the line was natural. Brother Vanchil thought with interest that he hadn't seen guys like that in a long time. Some time passed and Pendo picked up the magazines to study them. Pendo looked at the magazines in amazement, unable to understand how this was possible. Tondal, looking at the magazines, realized that there were many mistakes in them, so he decided to rewrite them from scratch. Brother Vanchil remarked with a smile that even he could see the order in the journals, and realized that the guy was not joking, when he put his life on the line. Pendo irritably declared that he was no better than him. His brother replied that a real man knows when to admit defeat. He approvingly stated that a worthy employee had joined their office and wished him to stay with them. Tondal smiled and said he was ready to stay forever, and his brother chuckled and went to show him the brothel. Tondal wondered in surprise how everything had turned out and was lost in conjecture as to how it had happened. He walked along, not understanding what was happening, but clearly aware that he had been given a second chance. After 42 years of living in the criminal world, he had barely 15 coins in his pocket. He firmly decided for himself that everything would be different in this life, that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. He thought about the gold and treasures that had slipped away from him and decided that everything would change. He regretted all the encounters and connections he had been deprived of in the past, and now he hoped to make amends. This time, he would definitely reach the highest peak of the night with the greatest power. In his thoughts, the desire to live long and happily, finding joy in every moment, matured. Orthodox sects and demonic cults are classic protagonists of martial arts stories. They are inhabitants of the shadows of the world, where the dregs of society are left with nothing but their bodies and debts to trade. Brother Wangchil demanded repairs upon his return, and Cheo Piondo obediently accepted. Tondal saw that all the profitable markets had already been taken, leaving people to starve, but he would not let this continue. This is a brothel on Guanghua Street called Stairway to Heaven. Seeing the manager, the head manager of the brothel bowed with a respectful smile and warmly asked him to visit more often. People were drawn to Wang Shil because he did not look down on them and lived his life devoted to his work. Fen Shil admitted his long absence, but all he heard in response was that the manager should have come himself. The manager raised his eyebrows in surprise because the manager had personally brought the newcomer to their house. He could barely contain his admiration, as the young man had mastered 4 Talmuds of non-classical characters. The manager said his name was Gu Chenyong, and Tondal responded with respect. Gu Chenyong announced that they had received a new batch of wine from Shaoxing and invited everyone to taste it without delay. His brother sighed discontentedly at the instruction, but Tondal confidently declared that he could handle it himself. His brother was indignant, but Tondal just smiled and noted that it was more important to finish the conversation with the manager. Wangchil laughed, noting Tondal's kindness, and allowed him to come whenever necessary. The manager praised his quick wit, and his brother was delighted. Tondal realized that now they would walk side by side to the end. He couldn't shake the feeling that something unexpected would happen today. He saw an old man dragging something and thought how hard life must be for him. Those at the bottom are forced to suffer, while others get rich. Among the deals, alcohol brought in the most profit, while the small divisions were left with only the scraps. Tondal realized that it was time for them to start their own profitable business, rather than being satisfied with scraps. It suddenly dawned on him that his grandfather was transporting alcohol. He noticed that the rope holding the alcohol was about to break. The rope snapped, and the bottles of alcohol fell straight onto the girl. Tondal screamed at the top of his lungs, trying to warn her about the falling alcohol. He rushed forward and shielded the girl with his body from the falling bottles. Tondal exhaled heavily and felt relieved that he had managed to cover the girl. He hurriedly turned to her and asked anxiously if she was okay. She assured him that everything was fine and noted that Tondal was the only one who had been injured. But he said that everything was fine and cautiously asked if the girl could continue on. Tondal smiled. It seemed that the aroma of wine had slightly intoxicated him, and it was clearly worth it. Confusion and fear suddenly overwhelmed the girl, her eyes widening. The manager rushed to the girl, calling her mistress, and immediately began shouting at the servants, demanding a doctor. The mistress calmed everyone down, saying there was no need to cause a commotion. Tondal was surprised to notice that everyone was addressing the girl as mistress. She told him that he probably did not know her, but she was indebted to him and her name was Yun Jae-yun. Tondal also introduced himself. Yun Jae-yun sternly ordered the servants to take Tondal to the doctor. He stopped her and said that there was no need for that. They told him they wanted to wash him, and he asked in bewilderment why. The mistress looked at him sternly with a serious and attentive gaze and called him by name. Tondal left, and Yeonjun discussed him with the general manager. She asked about Wang Chil's words, and the manager explained that he was usually stingy with praise, but he praised Tondal without restraint. The manager smiled, suggesting that Yeon Jae-yong was interested in the man, but she objected, saying that it was not the case. The manager said that he seemed simple-minded, but gave the impression of a man with a past and also did not seem like a gangster. Then Tondal arrived and expressed his gratitude for the tea and warm bath. The hostess asked about the tea, and he replied that it was pointless to waste exquisite snow tea on a gangster like him. Yun Jae-yun was surprised that he immediately recognized snow tea, a true connoisseur. She decided to give him some to take with him. Tondal refused the tea, and the hostess asked if she could offer a service in return. She then explained that she didn't want to offend him, but in her opinion, help should be repaid. Tondal felt himself stumbling over his words, gathered himself, and told the hostess that he had one request. He asked her to forgive the mistake made by the elderly man who had been unloading the wine. Yang Jiyong asked if that was all he wanted, and Tondal replied that he had already received clothes, a warm bath, and medical care. In addition, he had tasted high-quality snow tea and enjoyed its rare flavor. The hostess respectfully noted that he was a good man and agreed not to blame the old man. She expressed her desire to greet Tondal personally on his next visit, and he said it would be an honor for him. The manager overheard the conversation and thought that she did not greet guests personally. Apparently, spring had come for her too. Stairway to Heaven was an excellent brothel with only one problem. Pyongdo asked furiously if Bagdan really wanted to argue, even about Stairway to Heaven. His brother said that Guan wanted to take their establishment. But Cho replied that even though he was the son-in-law of the guild leader, this was too much. Wang Chil explained that Heban wanted to leave them with nothing, and if they didn't accept the bet, he would use force. Tondal thought that in his past life, Begden had been deprived of the stairway to heaven because of Guan Heban's greed. In the criminal world, there is a significant difference between the influence of an official department and that of some office. That is why in their past life, they had to give up the brothel. Tondal asked Wang Chil if he could tell him all the details of the bet, and he thought to himself that now was the time to truly shine. The son-in-law of the head of the Baekdan clan, Guan Heban, was the embodiment of greed, depriving the office of profits in his past life. Old man Guillaume borrowed 15 taels of silver from Baekdan and now claims that he has no way to repay the debt. If they can collect the debt from old man Guillaume, they will keep the stairway to heaven. The brother wondered what skills one would need to be able to collect a debt where others were powerless. Tondal reproached Baekdan for his weakness, but Wang Chil objected that in this world, power decides everything. Tondal set off on his journey and replied to his brother's question that he was going to see old Guillaume. Wang Chil was indignant that Guillaume had not given in to torture or threats, but Tondal assured him that the approach was wrong. He confidently declared that he would take care of the 15-tael debt on Cheonsan Street. Tondal coldly suggested that his brother raise the stakes. Cho Pyong-do flared up, saying that such an important matter could not be entrusted to an inexperienced novice. His brother acknowledged that Tondal was willing to risk his life and did not dispute his worth without good reason. Wang Chil noticed that even a novice was willing to take a risk and wondered if it was time for him to stake something important. The head of the Baekdan division, Guan Heban, noticed their arrival and thought with a slight smile, "Oh, you're here too." He eagerly anticipated demonstrating his skills, unable to hide his curiosity. Guan even brought along a promising newcomer who introduced himself as Chan Baekdan. His brother asked how things were going, and Guan just laughed and replied that everything was fine. Before starting work, Chan Baekdong trained with Tondal in the same unit. Guan asked who this guy was, and his brother replied that he was their promising newcomer. Guan said that if his brother retired, he would gladly take him in. He noted with a cold smile that his brother would have to leave if he only had one arm left. Tondal realized that Wang Chil's stakes were high. Success meant a ladder to heaven. Failure meant the loss of his wrist. Gun warned that he had brought a sharp axe with him for safety. Then he decided it was time to start collecting funds. Brother Van Schel tensed, sensing the approach of the decisive moment. Tondal saw his confidence. He considered the money unattainable, but he knew they would succeed, because he remembered the incident with old man Guillaume from beginning to end. Guan addressed the old man with a slight sneer, asking how he was doing. The old man complained that he had no money, and Guan smiled and warned him that the newcomers would be talking to him. Guan demanded that he be kind to the newcomers, and that if he had any money, Guan would be disgraced. Tondal thought that Guan was openly pressuring the old man, but if he succeeded, the ladder to heaven would be completely his. Tondal asked how the old man's son was doing, and he replied that he did not know, as his son had disappeared a month ago. He had heard that the son had gambled away the family fortune. Even the borrowed money was gone, and he regretted that it had not happened on their land. The old man asked him to beat him and leave in peace, but Tondal said he would not become a monster and would not strike the old man. Tonal demanded an axe from Bikon, who asked anxiously why he needed it. Tonal, with a smug smile, reminded him that he had the gift of clairvoyance. He assured Becton that his sister, who had left home 2 years ago, would soon return and asked him not to worry. Becton asked how Tondal knew about his missing sister, and Tondal replied with a smirk about his clairvoyance. Guan dismissed it, assuring him that it was just a rumor, and ordered him to focus on his business instead of beating around the bush. Why do you think Tondal suddenly started talking about clairvoyance? Tondal swung his axe at the floor and shouted, showing where he wanted to strike. He exclaimed that they were using the god of luck for their own gain, and he warned them that heaven would punish them for such behavior. The old man cried out in horror, begging him to stop what he was doing. Guan was surprised that old man Guillaume, who had not flinched even with a broken arm, suddenly reacted so sharply. His brother cried out and stopped the old man abruptly, ordering him to turn back. The old man shouted that there was nothing there, calling them idiots and insisting that there was absolutely nothing. Tondal smiled slightly and said, "Yeah, right," showing his confidence. He asked mockingly if this was the same boy who had run away a month ago. Brother and Guan were shocked that it was Guman's son. The son cried out to his father, who reassured him that the laws of the province would protect them. Tondal told the old man that his years of experience had taught him nothing and reminded him of a rule that was above the law. Tondal demanded 15 taels right away, and the old man replied furiously that he had nothing and urged him to fear the law. Tondal cut off the old man's son's finger, committing a cruel and unexpected act. Tondal shouted, demanding that the man open his palm and threatening to cut off his entire hand if he did not comply. He mockingly remarked that without a pinky finger, one could only pick one's nose, and without a hand, even urinating would be a problem. Tondal said with a smirk that if they cut off his legs and arms, horseradish would be next. The old man shouted, "Stop!" in an attempt to intervene and defuse the situation. He exclaimed that he would pay everything and give it all away, trying to calm the situation down. His son was lying on the floor, and that was how the incident with old man Gum happened. In the past, he never paid his debt, cheated the division, and slipped away in the night with his son. Tondal called it the most shameful incident in the history of their business. Wang Chil asked if that meant the stairway to heaven was now theirs, and Tondal confirmed with a smirk that he had the documents. Guan began to shout that this was outrageous and that clairvoyance was forbidden. He was furious, barely containing his anger and irritation. Tondal threw an axe at him, and Guan exclaimed in amazement. He apologized, explaining that an evil spirit, the leader of the unit, was sitting on Guan's shoulder. Tondal ordered him to stand still and promised to remove it himself, asking him to trust him. Guan shouted that Tondal was crazy and told him not to come near him. He ran after him with an axe, thinking that luck was finally on their side. Van Chill looked at Tondal with curiosity, wondering about his mysterious abilities. He asked suspiciously about the basement, and Tondal calmly replied that he felt a void under the floor. Van Chill was stunned, but Tondal only said that it was a premonition, because that son couldn't have escaped. Tondal suggested that he was hiding for a chance, because 15 taels would be enough for a new life. Brother Van Chill narrowed his eyes and clarified that Tondal had no abilities. Tondal just laughed, and his brother grumbled that he was an evasive piece of shit. Van Chill said that with such talents, the head office would be fighting over him. Tondal asked him again in surprise, not believing his ears. His brother admitted that he didn't have much hope for him. After the death of the previous manager, he was no longer the same. He noted that he still had management experience in the Red Tiger community and could introduce Tondal to the head office. Wanchil warned that Guan Heben would not let this go, and Tondal asked with interest what he would do. Wanchil grimly remarked that Guan would crush them with force, that there were only 5 people in the office, and how could they stop him? Tondal mockingly remarked that Wang Chil was too timid for such a strong man, and Wang Chil furiously asked him to repeat what he had said. Tondal told his brother to mind his own business, saying that he would find a way to protect the stairway to heaven himself. Tondal declared that one should live lavishly, not modestly, but Vanchil remarked that excessive greed only spoils the stomach. Tondal shrugged and admitted that there was nothing he could do about it. He just loved to eat. Vanchil grunted, saying that he was going to kick the ball guy out until he resigned, but then he got involved with this guy. Tondal suggested kicking the ball guy from a high perch and hinted at the position of leader, but his brother reminded him that connections were more important. Van Shil noted that the guy was still the head's son-in-law, and Tondal said that if his wife left, the whole value of the family would collapse. Van Shil doubted that it would be easy to destroy their marriage, and Tondal chuckled that it would be easier than steaming turnips. He noted that the guy was a womanizer, and it would be easy to catch him cheating, then see if his wife would forgive him. Tondal suggested exposing his dirty deeds, and his brother smiled. With such a mind, he could be in the imperial palace. But he replied that he didn't need a palace. It was better to rule from the shadows of this world. He said with a smirk that he would become the Emperor of Shadows, ruling invisibly. Gwen Heben shouted that all the girls from the Stairway to Heaven should be recalled, and the courtesans and alcohol should be removed immediately. Cho Jin-ho warned that the penalties for violation would be enormous, but Guan said that it was all his responsibility. Jin-ho nodded and said he understood, agreeing to the order. He thought that if this damn pig weren't the leader's son-in-law, his place would already have been taken by him. Jin-ho noted that it would take at least 20 days to move the girls and asked if it was worth doing, but Guan barked that he didn't care. Guan shouted that they were part of the criminal world and would even stab their father if necessary, then hit Jin-ho. He coldly declared that Jin-ho was a prejudiced creature, still running errands because he didn't understand anything. Jin-ho cursed inwardly, wondering why he had to put up with all this. Baekdong curiously asked Tondal if he really had psychic abilities. He said that his sister had returned home, just as Tondal had said, and Tondal asked if he looked like a liar. He admitted that he believed him and asked why he had called him. Tondal asked to be taken to the unit's apartments. Baekdong anxiously noted that after the incident with the old man, the leader disliked Tondal. Tondal predicted that he saw a deadly eclipse, and Baekdong asked him to repeat it. Tondal replied that Baekdong would be slain by the sword very, very soon. Baekdong asked again if it was true, and Tondal said with a smirk, "Do you doubt my gift of clairvoyance?" Baekdong begged him to save him and said he believed Tondal, but Tondal replied that there was a price to pay for changing fate. He promised to get the keys to the apartments, even if it was just the room with the accounting journals, if only he would save him. Soon, Guan Heben would take their girls and alcohol and strike them with all his might. This problem would be solved if Tondal got the keys from Bacon, but they would not be able to resist by force. The rabble in their shop was simply meaningless, said Cho Pyong-do. Tondal had something in mind. A man from a criminal gang came to Chan Yuso and offered a deposit of 6 tiles of silver and 2 tiles per month. He said he would arrange housing for Chan and his wife and would wait for his consent, then call him. Chan thought about his offer, whether to join the criminal gang. His wife Hyomin asked if he would accept the offer, but he only said that she shouldn't get up and asked why she had come out. She suggested that he simply return to the army, because otherwise he would be going against his convictions. Chan retorted that his military salary would not be enough to pay for her treatment, and without her, his life would be meaningless. To cure his beloved and earn money, he left the army and began to wander around the world. However, in the world of martial arts, he was just an unemployed man who could only wield a sword, and no one would take him in. The only way to earn money was through shady deals. Then Tondal came to him. Tondal introduced himself and asked if he was the hero, Chan Yusum. Chan Yusum wanted to know from Tondal what had brought him there. Tondal explained that he was from the Red Tiger community, and Yusum said he knew it was a criminal gang. Tondal offered to join them, saying they would pay 5 taels in advance, then 1 per month. Yusum objected that their conditions were worse than those of the Sea-Wave community. However, Tondal did not seem like a henchman of lawlessness. He had an unusual aura about him. He is like a sword in its sheath, Yusum thought of Tondal. Tondal knew that an envoy from the Sea-Wave had come before him and that conditions there were better. But Yusum was a hero, not a bandit. He continued, saying that no one with a clear conscience could join the criminal world. They would not demand the impossible and could guarantee something. That the hero Chan Yusum would not do anything he did not want to do himself. Chan asked Tondal what if he didn't agree to anything at all. Tondal proudly said that a tiger is capable of instilling fear with its mere existence. The only person who could turn their rabbit hole into a tiger's lair was Chan Yusum. Of all the people Tondal knew, he was the most underrated, and he was sure to get him into their gang. Wangchul announced that from now on, Tondal would be the leader of their squad, and everyone should treat him with respect. Cho Pyondo began to complain that he had arrived 2 months before Tondal, but his brother shut him up. Then Tondal came in and asked what was going on, not understanding what was happening. Cho Pyondo cursed at him, calling him a son of a bitch, and said enviously that he was lucky. Tondal, not understanding what was going on, asked what had gotten into Cho, but they addressed him as their leader and offered him water. Then, of course, they explained to Tondal that he had been appointed squad leader and he was terrified. He told one of the office workers that he had only been in the squad for 10 days and felt uncomfortable in front of the guys. Gwen Busun replied that he held no grudge against Tondal. Brother Wangchil laughed and told Tondal not to worry about his friend. He would come to terms with it. The brother asked about the new guy because he had prepared 5 tiles and wanted to know where he was. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door and someone's voice asked if anyone was inside. Tondal thought it was probably Chan Yusum and noted to himself that it was just in time. Tondal was not mistaken. The door opened and there he was. The brother noted to himself that this warrior looked truly formidable. Vanchil was surprised at how the youngster had come out to him. The warrior said that he had delayed because he needed to think things over. The warrior handed him the money and said that he had come only to return it. Tondal asked him if he would go into the sea wave, but he said he had a condition. Chan said that if anyone could last 10 seconds in a fight with him, he would accept the offer, and he said the same thing to the sea wave. Vanchil asked in surprise why he needed sparring, and Yusum replied that he wanted to test his intuition. He also noted that he would like the leader of the squad to draw his sword. He then suggested meeting in 3 days at the Rad Hour. Vanchil and Tondal stood there in bewilderment, unable to say anything. Vanchil was surprised and asked where Tondal had found him, but he only replied that it was all connections. His brother sighed that it would be great if he became part of the family, and Tondal smiled, confident that it would happen. Vanchil doubted that Tondal could last 10 seconds, because the warrior looked stronger than the expert in their community. Tondal confidently stated that even 10 hobebs were no match for Yusum, and his brother asked in surprise if this was true. Vanchil noted the guy's problematic nature, and Tondal emphasized that setting conditions was a sign of his desire to participate. Tondal remarked that he was simply looking for a reason to join, and Vanchil sharply asked if he could last 10 seconds in a fight. Tondal answered Vanchil's question in the negative, but clearly had something in mind. The day of the meeting arrived, and Chan Yusum thanked everyone for coming. There was a member of the Sea Wave community named Gun So Son. The leader of their community's unit, Won Tai-hyun, also came and said that holding out for 10 seconds was no problem. Yusum approvingly said that this was a worthy statement and showed his weapon, a stick. Won Tai-hyun noted that it was not customary to use toys in the Forest of Swords Dosan. Yusam said that they don't teach that in the army, and Tai-hyun added that they don't have time to swing sticks around. Gung So-sin stated that the leader of the unit was free to use any weapon. The leader coldly warned that if he lost his arm, he would have only himself to blame. Then he wondered, if he wins or lasts 10 seconds, what should he say to the kid? Tondal smirked and told him not to drag it out, as he wouldn't win anyway. Won Tai-hyun barked, but Tondal calmly replied that he was a talkative slacker with a guide. Gong So-san said mockingly that Tondal was very bold and suggested a bet. He said he was willing to bet on whether the leader would last the fight. Tondal snorted and bet 5 taels that the leader wouldn't last, and Gun So-san smiled, asking if he should bet the same amount. Tondal snorted and boldly said that if he chickened out, he should just wither away. Gung coldly warned that Tondal would not regret his words later. The leader smirked, clearly seeing that the warrior was afraid of a real sword. In his mind, the warrior was just an army wimp who had never seen real slaughter. Won Tai-hyun clenched his fists and promised to finish the warrior off with one blow. The warrior waited calmly, watching the leader, who had already raised his weapon to strike. Won Tai-hyun's eyes flashed with rage and he swung at his enemy, determined to finish him off quickly. The stick in Chan Yusum's hand struck, and the leader flew back, losing his balance. The warrior said with a smirk that if it had been a real sword, the leader would not have survived, and declared victory. Anger and irritation were evident on Won Tai-hyun's face as he looked at the warrior. The leader exclaimed that he was not dead, and the warrior calmly replied that he had no desire to continue the sparring. Then he calmly added that if Won Tai-hyun wanted to, he would continue. But Won Tai-hyun knelt down, submitting to the situation and showing humility. Won Tai-hyun quietly said with a heavy sigh that he had lost. Gung So-sin noted with surprise that he had not even managed to scratch him, and that such a valuable shot could not be missed. Tondal confidently declared that now it was his turn. Gung asked what would happen if Tondal didn't last 10 seconds, and the warrior calmly replied that then he would be all theirs. Chan Yusum turned to Tondal with hope for understanding, but he smiled and said that their conditions were better. Tondal said he also had a request, and the warrior asked him to state it. Tondal demanded to use a real sword instead of a wooden one. The warrior noticed that Tondal had drawn his blade, and Tondal said that he wanted to test it. Chon Yusam confidently said that he was very happy to become Tondal's opponent. The warrior slowly and confidently drew his sword, preparing for the clash. Gong So-san noted that his thirst for blood had reached a new level, and that he had not revealed his full power in sparring with the leader. Gong So-san anxiously asked what would happen if the warrior killed Tondal. The warrior briefly stated that he was already preparing to attack, and everyone tensed up. Gun So-san and Wan Tae-hyun were frightened, not expecting such determination from the warrior. The warrior said that fortunately his intuition had not failed him. Tondal proved to be a worthy opponent and defended himself in this sparring match. Military service is a special type of army service assigned for serious crimes. It is usually considered a punishment of particularly dangerous service in the army. Serious crimes for which such service is assigned are punishable by death. Military service is extremely dangerous and is a severe test for the criminal. Tondal blindly believed that freedom awaited him after pleading guilty, but he became an army dog with the status of a criminal. Military service is intended for those who have nothing to lose. They are thrown into situations where there is almost no chance of survival. From hot Hainan to cold Mongolia, from sea pirates in Japan to steppe horsemen, they went everywhere. For 3 years, Tondal wandered the battlefields, worse than hell. Among the guilty soldiers, he was the only one who survived the longest. He was given a name that became legendary among the ghost soldiers of the battlefield, the one who returns from hell alive. He outlived everyone he knew, everyone who fell beside him. Since then, he has been called Chonsalvi, the ghost who knows no death. Chan Yusum said he expected to last only 10 seconds, but the time had long passed. Tunnel politely thanked Master Chan for the sparring. Master Chan admitted that he himself did not expect the sparring to last so long. He added that if the duel had continued, the outcome would have been even more intense. The master admitted that this duel had tempered his arrogance and thanked him. Gong Sasan sharply called out to Tondal, drawing his attention. Gung was surprised to learn that Tondal was only 18 years old, yet he was already serving in the Red Tiger community and was a martial arts master. Gung So-soon offered Tondal a higher position, and Tondal asked how much higher. He invited Tondal to join the Sea Wave community and offered him the position of manager under his personal responsibility. Tondal thought that this was a rare deal, as few people become leaders by the age of 20, and he had clearly made an impression. He politely thanked him for the offer, but said he preferred to choose his own path and would therefore decline. Gun Sasan said that Tondal would regret it later, but he just smiled and said, "We'll see." Tondal reminded Gun of something, and Gun asked in surprise what exactly he had forgotten. Tondal abruptly demanded 5 tolls from Gun and asked him to hand them over. He thought that getting Chan Yuso was a great achievement, and that things were going better than he had expected. Tondal himself had served as a suicide bomber on the battlefield, as a result of which he lost his leg. As soon as he became useless as a fighter, the army graciously forgave his sins and released him. It was then that Tondal returned to Hangzhou with nothing, disappointed, having failed to accomplish his plans. 3 years of service had thrown Tondal to the sidelines of life. He was talented, but they broke him, not giving him a chance to shine. In this life, everything will be different, Tondal decided, clenching his fists and looking ahead. For now, Tondal's mind would be much more useful to him than the body of a hardened fighter. He knew that the power of thought could open doors that a sword could only break. He easily entered Guan Heban's office thanks to the keys he had previously received from Chang Baekton. Tondal realized that the pig had deliberately cut back on supplies after losing the stairway to heaven and decided to check the logs. Tondal thought to himself that here they were, finally before his eyes. Tondal was amazed at the number of districts under control. He realized that it would take years to copy everything. Just then, Guan Heban entered the office and exclaimed irritably how many times he had asked for the doors to be repaired. He was indignant, noting that there was not a single competent worker among them. Tondal thought Guan was crazy. Why come to the office at such a late hour? He entered the office with a girl who asked how long it would take. Guan Heban told the girl to stay out of the way and wait there. Tondal thought it was a woman's voice, and judging by the tone, it was not Heban's wife, but a courtesan. Gun said that he had caught Elder Han, and if he wrote him down in the expose book, he would have him in his hands. Tondal wondered what kind of book it was and assumed that it recorded people's weaknesses. Elder Han was the second most influential person in the Red Tiger community after the leader. At that moment, the girl cried out, and Tandal and Guan simultaneously turned their attention to her. Guan asked what was wrong, and the girl confessed that she had broken some porcelain and asked how to clean up the mess. Tandal wondered to himself why she had even touched the porcelain. Guan saw the blood and assumed that there must be a change of clothes in the wardrobe, asking her to wait a minute. Tandal thought that Guan was coming here and would discover him now. He thought he had been careless and that now it was all over for him. Tandal muttered to himself that since it had come to this, he might as well go through with it. He hadn't finished his thought when the girl cried out. She asked Guan what he was doing and asked him to take her to the doctor. Gen refused and insisted on changing the girl's clothes, but she screamed again that she was dying of pain. Guan got angry and asked where her feminine patience was. Then they left, leaving Tandal alone with his thoughts. Tandal breathed a sigh of relief. He had almost been caught, but everything had turned out fine. He thought to himself that he had relaxed, relying on his knowledge of the future, and decided to be more careful from now on. He found out where the courtesans lived so that they couldn't leave. He thought that the best thing to do would be to transfer the courtesans to their office. The money would pay off in the long run, of course, but it would still be very expensive, and they were in dire need of it now. Therefore, Tandal turned to the madam of the brothel for help. She asked Tandal with a smile what had brought him to her. Tandal again asked the madam to lend him money. Tandal decided to put his pride aside and focus on the matter at hand. The sudden request to borrow money stunned Yan Jiyan, and she asked if it was related to the conflict with Baekdong. As expected of the landlady, she knew a lot, and Tandal said she was right. The landlady asked if it was true that Baekdong was taking the girls away, and Tandal decided to transfer them to his establishment. Tandal said he was ready to help with everything from transportation to caring for the courtesans, as long as the girls stayed. He promised that there would be no problems with this matter. Yeonjae-yeon thought Tandal was a strange man, but she could sense genuine concern in his words. His words sounded like a scam, but the confidence in his eyes made her trust him. She told Tandal that his words seemed trustworthy to her. Yeonjae-yeon decided that since that was the case, why not help each other? Tandal was ready for anything. The hostess smiled and asked if he knew what sigaju was. He knew it was a precious drink. He had tried it only once in his past life. One bottle of this drink cost 2 taels of silver and was highly valued because demand exceeded supply. The hostess suggested that if Tandal could get some sigaju, she would grant his wish, but he thought that was nonsense. He thought that the suppliers could be pressured according to the old traditions of the criminal world, but that was unacceptable. He went to the suppliers to negotiate, and an old man asked him what he wanted in his shop. He introduced himself as the owner and said his name was Guan Pengyun. Tandal also introduced himself to the owner and said he was from the Gwanghwa office. Guan Pengyun asked in surprise if Tandal remembered him, which stunned him. Memories of this old man came back to Tandal, and he realized who he was. It was an old man unloading a cart, so it turns out he wasn't so blind after all. Tandal was surprised that the old man remembered him and asked if he had been hurt back then. Guan snapped that it was Tandal who had gotten hurt. Guan was curious about this brothel that had been hunting for his alcohol for a year. Tandal guessed that they had been spying undercover at the time, but his grandfather corrected him, saying that they weren't spying but probing. His grandfather asked why Tandal had asked the landlady not to punish him. Tandal wanted to know how he found out, but Guan ordered him to answer the question. Tandal replied that he had asked just like that, and the old man was very surprised by his answer. Tandal saw himself as helpless in him, but decided not to talk about it and asked why the old man was interrogating him. The old man said that Tandal was too nice to be a bandit, and Tandal objected, calling his words nasty. The old man asked how old he looked, and Tandal guessed that he was about 70. The old man frowned in dissatisfaction. He should have guessed 10 years younger. Tandal smiled, wondering how many polite gangsters he had seen. The old man remarked that Tandal didn't look like a typical gangster, and Tandal replied that shit was still shit. Tandal asked what the point of this exchange of pleasantries was, but the old man just smiled and said that friendship begins with conversation. Then the old man asked when exactly Tandal needed Sagid. Tandal was surprised by the old man's question, not expecting him to get to the point so quickly. Guan explained that the landlady had told him everything and asked him to confirm the delivery date. Tandal was taken aback. The landlady knew that the old man was the owner of the shop, and he confirmed that the delivery had already been agreed upon. He thought it would be difficult, but everything had already been handed to him on a silver platter. Brother Wangchil was shocked. He believed that there were deceivers everywhere, simply everywhere. He received money for transporting courtesans, and they even provided him with supplies from Sagitsu and recruited the hero Chanya. Tondel confirmed that this was indeed the case several times. Brother couldn't believe his ears. How could all this be resolved in just 3 days? Cho Pendo was surprised. Sagaju was a real jackpot. The main thing was that it wasn't just empty bravado. His brother said that Cho was showing off and reminded him to treat the leader with respect, hitting him on the elbow. Tondel asked if they could finish the remaining tasks overnight because he had to leave. Vanchil asked in surprise where he was going, and Tondel explained that he had another unfinished business. Now that they had caught the tiger, they needed to befriend it. Tondel grinned. He waited for someone, sitting in the dark and listening to the silence of the night. Lady Sun was passing by, walking slowly and quietly down the deserted street. Tondel asked her where she was going so fast in the night. Lady Sun stopped and Tondel continued, saying that if she disappeared, Master Chan would worry. In his past life, as soon as Chan Yusum joined the criminal world, Lady Sun left him. She believed that he had given up his dream because of her and ran away, and Yusum later became a Yakshi. Lady Sun believed that Chan would be better off without her and told Tondel so. She was sure that she had to disappear so that Yusum could continue to dream and not turn to crime because of her illness. She said it would not be easy for him, but he would overcome everything. Tondel said that a gangster like him would not understand this. The girl was outraged, thinking Tondel was mocking her, but he simply said directly that he believed she had a pure heart. Tondel asked what would hurt Yusum more, giving up his dream or giving up Lady Sun. Then he suggested that she listen to one of his stories for a couple of minutes. Just because they worked together, not everyone was willing to be his ally. It was important not to be stingy with support here. Tondel did not want to see Yusoma broken. He warned that the story would be a little boring, about a bandit who lost his leg. To be precise, this story was about Tondel's past life, and he told it calmly. In his early 60s, he froze to death in the snowy mountains. What an idiotic life. If the bandit hadn't lost his leg, his life wouldn't have ended so miserably. Lady Sun said that the story was sad, but Tondel noted that it was still worth mentioning. The girl was taken aback and did not understand his words, apologizing for it. Tondel explained that her disappearance could be equivalent to the loss of a leg for that old man. The girl clarified that she was like a leg to Yusum, and Tondel said that she was even more than that. She couldn't find the strength to stay because she had lost her dream, but things don't always turn out the way you want them to. Tondel explained that the difference was in how you were willing to carry your cross, and she was throwing her cross onto Chanya. He suggested that it would be better to carry the cross together, staying close to the master. Lady Sun said that if she listened to the leader of the squad, she was some kind of nasty, faint-hearted woman. Tondel replied that maybe that was true and asked if she would continue on the path she had chosen. As a result, Sun Hyemin returned to Cheyuso, who had been searching everywhere for her, and her escape was a thing of the past. From now on, Chan Yuso would not stray onto the path of the Yakshi. Tondel made sure of that. Tondel congratulated his brother Wangchil on his 38th birthday. He gave him a pair of boots, and Wangchil asked what kind of boots they were. Vanchil was indignant at the gift, and Tondel replied that he had not even received his monthly salary yet. His brother reminded him of the 5 taels he had won from Gun Susan, and Tondel said he had spent them long ago. 2 went to pay for Master Chan's shelter, and the other 3 went to pay for his dear wife's medical treatment. Vanchil was surprised that Tondel had spent 3 taels on Lady Sun, and asked what kind of doctor it was. Tondel replied that it was a dark doctor. His brother clarified, a dark doctor who treats bandits and courtesans? Wanchil called Tondel a fool for paying a charlatan. Tondel replied that he would understand when he found out who it was. His brother asked who it was, and Tondel repeated that he would find out for himself. Vanchil asked where Tondel was going, and he replied that he was investing in the future. If it weren't for Vanchil's birthday, Tondel wouldn't have remembered the death of the magistrate, as he usually didn't care about such things. But if he saved this man, it would change a lot, and it wouldn't hurt to improve his relationship with the magistrate. Tondel knew that the murder had taken place in the Misi district. Someone was shouting, accusing some scoundrels of committing atrocities in broad daylight. 3 men told the magistrate that he was acting tough, but he had not yet taken office and had not become an official. The official shouted, enraged by their audacity, asking if they dared to attack him, knowing who he was. The bandits suggested pretending to be ignorant and killing him, but Yang Xuan exclaimed that he would pay more. Tongdal thought he was a pathetic guy since he was bargaining, so let him offer 10 times the amount. Yang Xuan still shouted that he would pay 10 times more, and Tongdal thought he was quick to catch on. The bandits yelled at him to just die and stop groveling. Just then, Tongdal jumped out and decided to stop them. Everyone was surprised, wondering who he was. But Tongdal didn't show it and explained that he was just a bandit passing by. He angrily said that they had nothing to do with the Red Tiger and had no business wreaking havoc on their territory. The bandits smiled coldly, saying that no one would interfere with them, especially someone like Tongdal. Tongdal stood his ground in the face of their insolence and sarcastically remarked that he didn't even want to dirty his blade on them. The bandits were outraged and began to approach, shouting threats. Tongdal didn't wait, punching one of them so hard that he flew backwards. He said that he was certainly not Chonsalvi in his prime, but he could stand up for someone or for himself. Everyone around him froze, stunned by his words and self-confidence. Tongdal went on to say that he was not much inferior to Chonsalvi. They did not back down and rushed at Tongdal with fury, hoping to overwhelm him with their numbers. But moments later, the three were lying on the ground, struck down by a single blow of fate. Tongdal approached the official and asked with concern if he was hurt. The official admitted with annoyance that only his pride had been hurt, and Tongdal smiled, noting that he was lucky. Yensun asked in surprise if Tongdal knew him, and Tongdal calmly replied that he did, without batting an eye. Suan asked anxiously if Tongdal was behind all this in order to gain the support of the new official. Tongdal remarked that Yang Suan had a rich imagination and said that he was half right. The official shouted angrily that if Tongdal was not in cahoots with the bandits, then he should kill them. Tongdal was stunned by the request and called the official a fool, then asked if he should kill them all. Yang Xuan asked his savior's name, and he replied that his name was Du Tongdal. Du Tongdal then explained that he was the leader of a group in the Red Tiger community, based in an office on Guanghua Street. Yang Xuan suggested that someone from a criminal gang was behind these bandits, and Tongdal offered his help. The official noted that he was not stupid enough to get involved with criminals, but he would have been drowned in blood if it weren't for Tongdal. Suan asked Tongdal which of the 6 government departments posed a threat to him. Tongdal thought that the security department was the most corrupt, so that was where the root of the evil lay. The public department had too good a reputation for that. The official asked with a smirk, which one of them earned the most? Tongdal was stunned. The official laughed loudly, saying he was just joking and would repay the debt when possible. Tongdal thought that this didn't seem like a joke, and began to wonder if he had saved Yang Xuan for nothing. The elder of the Red Tiger community, Han Dong-san, stood and pondered something. He thought that the alcohol today was really strong. His thoughts were interrupted by Tongdal, who had just approached and greeted him. Elder Han asked if Tongdal was from their community, and Tongdal explained that he was the leader of the Guanghua office detachment. Han remembered that he was the newcomer who had beaten Guan Yuhiban, which was an honor for Tongdal. Han thought that the Guanghua office was unlikely to have any business here, and assumed that Tongdal had come for services. But Tongdal said he didn't have the money for such a high-class brothel and had come to talk to the elder. Tongdal explained that it seemed Guan Yuhiban had found compromising information on Han Dong-san. Han was very surprised by this news and asked again, and Tongdal said that he had pocketed a lot of money. Elder Han did not understand what Tongdal was talking about. Tongdal apologized to him and said that they had nothing more to discuss. Tongdal left, thinking that now everything depended on who had more balls. Elder Khan came to his senses and decided to stop Tongdal. Tongdal smiled slyly and thought that it would be easier than easy to stop him. Han was outraged that Tongdal was so arrogant, throwing out bait and then immediately leaving, so Han decided to listen to him. Guan Yuhiban knows about the embezzlement of funds. He described it in detail in his exposé. Elder Khan did not believe Tongdal, but Tongdal insisted that he had seen the book and that Khan should check it out for himself. Han doubted that Tongdal was telling him this out of the goodness of his heart and asked what he wanted. Tongdal asked that Wang Chil's brother be appointed leader of the Baekdan unit. Khan asked if Tongdal was serious about his request, and Tongdal confirmed that he was. The Khan explained that he could not simply change the leader, even though he was an elder. Tongdal understood this, so he decided to provide the relevant reasons. Soon Guan Yuhiban would fall out of favor with the community leader because of problems with women. Han asked if Guan really had a mistress, and Tongdal laughed, saying it would be strange if he didn't. Knowing something and proving it are two different things, Han Dong-san protested. Tondal explained that he would not have come if he was not sure he could catch him. Han thought that Tondal was an interesting guy. His gaze said so. If Guan fell and his expose reached Han, he would gladly support Tondal. Tondal thanked Elder Han and wanted to ask something else. He inquired whether Khan happened to have any relatives who were going to the mountains. Khan replied that his sister-in-law was going to climb up to the Hen Temple the day after tomorrow, then wondered how Tondal knew. Around that time, a tragedy will occur near the Hen Temple, where a woman will be mauled to death by a tiger. Of course, Khan's sister-in-law probably didn't see even the tip of the tiger's tail. Tondal said that he saw a threat of a tiger attack on Khan's family, so it would be better not to go anywhere, which surprised Khan. Tondal said with a smile that it seemed Khan had not yet heard of his gift of clairvoyance. Lady Sun thanked the doctor and said that she had been feeling much better lately. The doctor said he was paid 3 taels, so he just did his job. Lady Sun was furious and asked why it cost so much money, but then she apologized to the doctor. He said it was natural, and it was very strange that the bandit paid him, because he treats venereal diseases. Lady-in-waiting Im Chunrun asked if her mistress had finished her therapy. Lady Song asked if she had been waiting long, as she could walk herself. The lady-in-waiting firmly said no, she was paid to serve and do her job. She laughed, saying that such alleys were dangerous even in broad daylight. Suddenly, they heard a terrible scream around the corner. The girls tensed up and became frightened. Im Chunran peeked carefully around the corner. A man was beating another man and shouting that he was loitering near the stairway to heaven, annoying the staff. This man was Tondal, and they swore in front of him that they would not come near him again. Tondal believed it was better to spread rumors about what happens when you mess with their office. The lady-in-waiting was very frightened, while the madam watched everything with disappointment and did not look away. Lady-in-waiting Im Chunrun suggested taking a different route. Lady Song's husband asked how her treatment was going and if everything had gone well. But she did not answer, simply saying that she had something to tell him. She said that the leader of the Do Squad had seriously interceded for him, but Chan did not understand what she was talking about. The stairway to heaven often encounters problematic individuals, from drunkards to those who deliberately cause trouble. After Chan Yusu began guarding the establishment, everything changed. He drove away all the riffraff without making a fuss, because he didn't want to really hurt people. But in the criminal world, the soft-hearted are not welcome, because good deeds are never repaid with good deeds. Lady Song complained to Yusom that her conscience was bothering her because Du was doing what Chan should be doing. Chan apologized for causing trouble, but his wife ordered him to apologize to Tondal. Then she added that Master Chan should do his job properly. She added that if he couldn't do it because of his beliefs, it would be unfair. Chan wondered if she didn't mind seeing him in an unflattering light. Lady Sun smiled sweetly and affectionately at Chan Yusom in response. She added that it just so happened that she was now the wife of a bandit. The elder shouted that Tondal had saved his daughter-in-law's life. How could he not have noticed such a benefactor right away? As expected, the tiger attacked the area around the temple that Khan Dun-san's sister-in-law was going to visit. The Khan was shocked at how such a thing could have been predicted. Such a clairvoyant could not be overlooked under any circumstances. Tondal asked if they now believed him, and Khan agreed and promised to do everything for him. The Khan asked when Tondal was going to strike at Haben's reputation. Tondal menacingly, angrily, and forcefully stabbed a knife into the table. He was going to damage Guan Heben's reputation today, without delay. This is the Baekdong division of the Red Tiger community. We will find out what is going on there now. Guan Heben was indignant that he had offered 100 copper coins, but still no one wanted to go. No one wants to get hurt for a fee of 100 copper coins. Even Master Chan no longer gives violators a break. Guan believed that Du Tongdal was to blame for everything and called him a bastard. The man with whom Guan was talking thought about something. Then he suggested using the Phantom Shadow and said he would look for him. The Phantom Shadow is a skilled assassin from Hangzhou. He sets his fee for murder depending on the complexity of the order. For Tondal's head, he demanded 6 taels of silver. Guan thought that bastard was charging too much, but his interlocutor said that it was still cheap considering his position. They reasoned that if they did nothing about dough, next time he would deprive them of their lucrative gambling house. Tondal's skills should not be underestimated, and they should take advantage of the opportunity to get rid of them. Guan was already annoyed by this conversation and ordered them to be quiet. As he left, he ordered that the ghostly shadow be given in advance, then muttered that today he needed to have some fun with Solyan. His subordinate advised him to refrain from cheating because Guan's wife was not herself, but he replied that he was not an idiot. He continued that only blockheads fail at everything. The girl asked at night if they could see each other so often. Guan Heben covered her mouth. He needed to relax today. Suddenly, his wife burst into the room, kicking the door open. She screamed, calling her husband by name, and Guan couldn't understand what was happening. His wife said irritably that Guan had finally shown his true colors. Hebo was so frightened that he began to stutter and couldn't even say the word darling. Guan Heben's overthrow went smoothly. He was caught with his former courtesan, Sol Yang. He was beaten by his own wife and disgraced, expelled from the Red Tiger community. Of course, those who passed on the information to the inconsolable wife were in grave danger. Guan was very angry. He believed that this was the work of Du Tandal. He thought that they had lived together for a long time and had feelings for each other, and that if he begged her, she would return to the organization. Tandal would soon become a ghostly shadow and everything would be fine. But then someone approached him. He was asked if he was the retired leader of the Baekdong unit in the Red Tiger community. Guan became angry and shouted, "Who was this person to call him by name?" Before Guan could react, the stranger cut off his head. And so Guan Heben, the former leader of the Baekdong unit, was no more. The stranger was a ghostly shadow, and he said that Guan's life was worth only one tael of silver. Tandal thanked Quan Sun-chan for his cooperation, and Quan Sun-chan thanked him. He had received 6 taels from Guan and successfully carried out the order. Only not on Tandal, but on Guan. He asked Tandal to put in a good word for him with Wang Chil. Quan gave Tandal 2 taels of silver from the 5, but Tandal said it wasn't worth it. Quan said that he also had something to eat, calmly and with a slight smile. After Guan Heben was overthrown, the leader of the unit changed as planned. Everyone welcomed the new leader of the unit, who turned out to be Wang Chil's brother. He thought that even mouse holes sometimes let in a ray of light. He called his deputy, Jin Ho, over for a moment. He entered his office and closed the door tightly so that no one could hear their conversation. Wang Chil apologized to Jin Ho for taking the position that rightfully belonged to him. Jin Ho said without hesitation that he should promise to give the seat back to him later. Jin Ho laughed because as soon as Wang Chil got to headquarters, it wouldn't be his final position. Wang Chil modestly said that even the position of unit leader was too much for him, but Jin Ho noted that Du thought differently. Jin Ho believed that Tandal would not allow his brother to stay here, and Wang Chil said that he might be right. Jin Ho said that Tandal had come to see him a couple of days ago, which surprised his brother. He explained that Tandal had checked in on him and asked him to take care of Vanchil. Vanchil thought that he couldn't sit still. Jin Ho laughed again and repeated that Do Tandal would not stop at being the leader of the unit, calling Wang Chil his brother. He said that Vanchil would probably have to give up the idea of living a long and modest life, as his brother had called him to come with him. Jin Ho said he would go with Vanchil depending on his actions. Tandal stood and looked at the Baekdong unit, thinking that he had already taken the first step. For him, this was only the beginning. The seeds of money had already been planted. Over the next 2 years, he planned to completely subjugate the Red Tiger community. Someone shouted, addressing Tandal rudely, interrupting his thoughts. They asked him if he was Tandal, the one everyone was talking about, the spitting image of Gigolo. 3 people discussed aloud that he was the new guy brought in by the leader, that he was very cute and well-groomed. One of the men asked Tandal to hold the broom, and Tandal took it. The man angrily ordered Tandal to get to work, because he was late. They began to explain to him that it was not fitting for Tandal to sweep, that he was the leader of the squad in the office. The man was indignant that Tandal was in charge of the garbage, and that it meant nothing in their unit. Tandal thought that they were pressuring him, and that it was very nice, and that it was better not to show off for now. Tandal was stunned by what he saw, not believing his eyes. Someone addressed these guys, called them friends, and put his hand on one of their shoulders. Then that someone said that they had already screwed up very badly. It was Van Chill, and he ordered them to repeat that crap about the office being a dump and so on again. Van Chill reassured Tandal not to worry about what had happened, that he should have taken care of his status in advance. Jin Ho would teach them a lesson, and Tandal said that they might hold a grudge against him for that. Tandal declared that he would sort it out himself and that they would learn to keep their mouths shut. If Tandal had not been capable enough, he would have lived a long and modest life, as Vanchil had punished him. Vanchil said that he now had a different opinion and was going to live a long and extravagant life with Tandal. The bandits came to the woman and threatened that if she delayed payment, they could not guarantee her safety. Van Chill created a new squad of 5 enforcers and appointed Tandal as their leader. They were assigned to Sanhwa Street, located near the casino and courtesans. One of the squad began to complain about why the leader was not participating, saying that he should set an example. Another asked that the leader be given time to get used to the situation first. They couldn't calm down and grumbled that Tandal was a cowardly puppy, and they wouldn't call him their leader because he was just a kid. Tandal decided to teach them a lesson because they had angered him. Then he decided to calm down and just be patient for a while. In 3 days, a large-scale confrontation will unfold with one of the 4 largest gangs in Hangzhou, the Black Dragon. The long and exhausting battle will end with the victory of the Black Dragon community, and the Red Tiger will give up 30% of its territory. It seems that around this time, Chanya Becton will be stabbed in the back and die. Of course, Tandal will not allow this to happen in this life. 3 days passed. Tandal came to the mistress of the stairway to heaven, and she was very happy to see him. The mistress said that she would probably have to order bodyguards from Becton in order to see Tandal. The mistress asked what brought him there, since he was not a customer. Tandal laughed because a bottle of wine cost as much as his salary. Tandal explained that he had come to borrow Master Chan. Master Chan asked if he should bring a weapon, but Tandal praised his skills and said that a stick would suffice. Tandal wondered if Chan had stopped limiting himself in his methods, and Chan said that he was still a criminal. Tandal asked if everything would be all right with Chan's name, and Chan replied that he was fine with it as long as Tandal asked. Tandal laughed that there wasn't much difference. The difference between a tiger and a cat is only in size, but sometimes a small difference can be very significant. Then one of the squad burst into the room and shouted, calling for the leader, "Do Tandal!" He started yelling at Tandal, asking where the hell he was, but Tandal didn't understand what was wrong. He said that the Black Dragon community had attacked Manhuza's house. The order to mobilize had already been given. Tandal asked when it happened, and he replied that it was about an hour ago, and 3 units had already gone there. Tandal thought that if it was about an hour ago, then the fight must have already ended. Du said that there was no need to rush, that they would get there in time, but the other man began to get upset, saying that, on the contrary, they had to hurry. Tandal couldn't take it anymore and snapped that if he was so impatient, he should go. But the other man said he couldn't, he had to deliver the message. Tandal exclaimed irritably that he should get moving. The bandit began to complain that Tandal was a stubborn moron and that he would be crushed for being late. Tandal did not lose his composure, but repeated that he should get moving because he had made himself clear. Master Chan asked if Tandal knew that an attack was planned for today. Tandal replied that these were just rumors, and Chan asked doubtfully, since he was in no hurry. Tandal calmly replied that sooner or later, the result would be the same, so there was no need to rush. Chan remarked in surprise that he had never met such an eccentric person as Tandal in his life. Tandal was delighted that Chan considered him a friend, the eccentric whom the master had been fortunate enough to befriend. Tandal told Master Chan not to back out later, and Chan confirmed that those were his words and he would not renounce them. They approached the scene of the massacre, and the head of the Black Dragon, Guan Changsok, said, "Oh, new faces." The people in black robes were definitely from the Black Dragon community. Most of the Red Tiger members had been mercilessly beaten. And those in blue robes, who are they? Tandal wondered. Probably warriors, Tandal thought. It seems they spared no expense. The community leader began to laugh that only 2 had come, but it didn't matter. He was ready to wait for the rest. Tandal declared that 2 was more than enough. Then he suggested not wasting time on empty talk. The community leader said mockingly that he thought they were a bunch of cowards, but it turned out that there were some tough nuts among them after all. Tandal noticed Becton lying on the floor and called out to him. He then ordered everyone to drag the wounded and those who could move to the side. The community leader ordered his men to take a couple of guys and watch the flank. Beksok from the Black Dragon squad suggested to the leader that he serve Tandal and Chan at the table, and the leader agreed. Tandal and Master Chan prepared their weapons for battle. A fight broke out, and the air was filled with the sounds of blows and screams. Tandal stepped forward, confidently parrying attacks and giving his enemies no chance. Master Chan moved alongside him, measuring each blow with skill. A moment later, the opponents were lying on the ground, struck by the speed and power of the attackers. Tandal said with a smirk that he had said there was no need to waste time. They stood side by side and watched the others with quiet confidence and calm. Tandal suggested killing 2 at once, but Chan waved him off and said that these 2 were his. He needed to get in shape. Tandal agreed to let him have them, and he pinned down the two. The bandits grumbled that they had the audacity to joke at such a moment. But arrogance knows no bounds, they thought. One of the bandits lunged at Tandal, but he stood confidently and didn't even blink. The slaughter began, with Tandal and Master Chan making moves that were not typical of ordinary bandits. Since the beginning of his new life, this was Tandal's first fight to the death. Everything went perfectly and Tandal and Master Chan prevailed once again. One of the gang members furiously called Du Tandal a slippery bastard, but he continued to fight with joy in his eyes and a smirk on his face. The leader looked at his subordinates with anger and irritation. They couldn't cope and didn't understand why, because Tandal didn't look like someone who could kill so many people. Tandal fought bravely without hesitation. He killed all his enemies again, leaving silence and dust behind him. Tandal stood proudly, feeling confident in his abilities. Behind him, his defeated enemies sighed heavily, realizing their defeat. Master Chan, without a doubt, had also understood everything. The community leader became angry and asked who they were. Tandal replied that he was the leader of a squad from the Baekdan unit. The community leader did not believe that a simple bandit could wield 3 bloody swords, so he asked what sect they belonged to. Tandal turned to the young Baekdan to confirm. Baekdan explained that he was Sergeant Tandal, leader of the Baekdan unit of the Red Tiger community. Tandal asked if he had heard him, and the community leader inquired what such fighters were doing in the bandits' lair. The community leader was indignant that someone like Tandal was commanding a small unit, but Du ordered him to stop talking. Tandal set the conditions: continue fighting or surrender. Guan Chengsuo became even more angry after hearing Tandal's words. In the world of mercenaries, to surrender is to die, so Guan asked to be treated more leniently. Then he ordered his men not to draw their weapons, but simply to move forward. In his past life, Tandal knew him only from rumors that he was a cruel man, but it turned out that he was quick to grasp the situation and understand what was best for his subordinates. Tandal smiled and suggested they have a drink sometime when they met. Gun was amazed and disappointed. All he could do at that moment was remember the Lord. Baekdan cheerfully supported Du Tandal's words, saying that the leader Du would treat them. Tandal objected, asking Baekdan to call him by his first name. Baekdan turned to the leader and said that he had told him to come today. As he had predicted that he would almost meet the bony woman, he put on a vest to prevent this from happening. From now on, he was ready to build a fire and jump into it if Tandal ordered him to. The elders asked if he had been a member of the community for no more than 2 months. They had a meeting of the elders of the Red Tiger communities, where they discussed Du Tandal. The leader of the Cho Chinwu community thought the boy had fallen on his head. Elder Han said that they were very lucky in the battle for Manhwa. He asked what would have happened if Tandal had not been there, and that he should be rewarded accordingly. The community defender was indignant, saying that it was too much praise for him just doing his job. He said that excessive rewards would create discord within the organization. Han said that the squad leader had done his job, but for some reason Han Songjun had failed, which made him furious. The chief asked who else was with Tandal, having heard that he was stronger, and Wang Chil said that he was a retired soldier. The elder was interested in why a soldier would help the underground, and Wang Chil replied that Tandal had asked him to. The elder assumed that they were indeed close friends, but he was interested in something else. He wanted to know where this soldier, Master Chan, lived. The subordinates greeted the leader of the detachment, Du Tandal, with joy. They greeted him and said that he had arrived early today. Until yesterday, they had considered him a youngster who was getting ahead with the help of Wang Chil, but their attitude toward him had changed. They informed Tandal that Elder Khan was waiting for him. This guy alone could change the Red Tiger's position in the criminal world. Tandal gave the elder the talisman he had ordered. Khan asked if the talisman would really help his sister-in-law get pregnant, and Do said to put it under her pillow. Tandal remembered that Khan threw a party 2 months after the Black Dragon attack because his sister-in-law had become pregnant. Khan thanked Tandal and told him to ask for anything he wanted, saying that the community leader himself wanted to reward him. Knowing him, Tandal thought it was unlikely to be anything grand, but Khan said he would add to it from his own pocket. Tandal believed it would be better to give compensation to everyone who had suffered in the battle. He was satisfied that his arms and legs were intact. Khan said that he was too good for a criminal life, and that the community leader was seriously interested in his friend Chan. It seems he wants him to work only for him, and there are even rumors that he is stronger than Tandal. By the standards of the martial arts world, he is a first-class fighter, and he would never agree to work for the community leader. Tondal said that they were lucky that he was not ashamed to help them. Elder Khan asked what he meant by ashamed. What tiger would like it if a dog came to lure him into submission, said Master Chan. The community defender was outraged, saying that this was insolence and that after insulting the community, he would not be allowed to stay here. Chan asked if he looked like a dog that wags its tail at the first opportunity. It seems that he overestimated the bandits because of the leader of the Do Squad. Master Chan stood before the leader of the elders and the defender of the community. Cho Chin-view, the leader of the elders, was convinced that Chan was indeed a tough guy. He said he would give Sam the position of defender if he moved to headquarters, but Chan was still tripling everything. The defender of the community said that if he poked fun at an upstart like Master Chan, the leader's reputation would be shaken. Courtesy is best cultivated in battle, replied Cho Chin-view. He ordered to begin, and the defender was already rolling up his sleeves and telling Chan to come closer. Chan replied that he was not going to leave his post to deal with him. Hun Songjun became angry, and something wild and dangerous flashed in his eyes. The enraged defender rushed at Chan, shouting that he was an insolent bastard. Chan stood unperturbed, as if his opponent's rage were nothing but empty noise. The defender swung, but Chan lightning fast intercepted his arm, stopping the blow. He did not expect such a turn of events, and his face flashed with astonishment mixed with fear. Chan coolly seized the initiative, quickly knocking the defender to the floor. The leader stood frozen in shock. He couldn't believe that his best fighter had been defeated in seconds. The defender lay sprawled on the floor, Chan stood calmly over him, and the leader watched, unable to say anything. Master Chan coldly asked the leader what he was going to do. The community leader would not cause trouble on the premises of a public house. There is a reason for the saying that birds chirp during the day and mice chirp at night. Jinho told Wang Chil that he didn't know about Hun, but the community leader's face had definitely been damaged, so they probably wouldn't let it go. Wang Chil asked Tondal if he was worried, and he said there was no one to worry about here. Tondal said that the community leader couldn't do anything to Master Chang anyway. Hun Sung-jun, the expert warrior of the Red Tiger community, was crushed with a single blow. The leader here is powerless. Chan Yusum apologized, saying he should have just endured it, but Tondal said he did everything right. They agreed that they would not force each other to do anything they did not want to do, and this promise remained unchanged until the end of the contract. Tondal added that a leader like him did not deserve a defender like Master Chan, and he became embarrassed. Then he asked when the contract would end, but Tondal reminded him that they had not discussed this. Tondal joked that it would end when he completely took over the criminal world of Hangzhou. Chan Yusu asked what Tondal was thinking, and he replied that he would not have involved them without big plans. Tondal thought they would do everything and decide in a year or two. Then he changed his mind and said that if they hurried, they could do it in a year. A few days later, the city went about its business as if nothing had happened. Tondal told the merchant that if anything happened, she should definitely contact him. Over the past couple of days, the atmosphere on Sonhwa Street had completely changed. Not only had the problems with criminal elements been resolved, but even the disputes between the merchants themselves had been settled. Just as the emperor must be attuned to the mood of the people, so too must communities maintain contact with their residents. Over the 60 years of his past life, Tondal had learned this lesson. Intimidation is only effective at certain moments. Someone shouted to Tondal that something terrible had happened, and there was alarm in their voice. Tondal pricked up his ears and asked what had happened. His subordinates said with horror that the magistrates had arrested their comrades, leaving everyone in shock. Van Chil asked if this was a special order from the new district judge. Not only members of the Red Tiger community were affected, but also the Black Dragon community, and the defender Hun was also arrested. Tondal asked how many members of the unit were behind bars. His subordinate replied that the answer would surprise Tondal. Then he replied that it wasn't surprising at all, as the officials hadn't even ventured into their territory. Van Chil couldn't believe how this was possible. Tondal thought so too, and he began to laugh. Van Chil remarked that he was happy that his brothers had been arrested. Tondal called Van Chil to the magistrate's office, and he asked if he should surrender. Tondal said he would explain everything on the way, and that it would be a good idea for his brother Jinho to come too. It would be good to take advantage of the opportunity and meet the judge. They approached the magistrate's office, and Tondal ordered someone to tell the judge that he wished to see him. Van Chil doubted whether it would work, since even the community leader was afraid of the judge. But Tondal asked him to trust him. The guards replied that this was no laughing matter. The judge was not the owner of a snack bar, and an appointment had to be made in advance. Tondal asked one of them if he was sure he wouldn't regret his words. Tondal said that he could lose his job, so it would be better to go and give his name to the judge and not be stubborn. The guard asked him to wait a minute and went to the judge. He returned and said that he had been instructed to treat them with respect. Vanchal asked Tondal if there would be any problems, and Du replied that we had to get our people out somehow. Breditz asked if Tondal could negotiate, and he replied that if he couldn't, he wouldn't have brought us here. Tondal opened the door to the judge's office, a little apprehensively, but he only heard that he was earlier than the judge had expected and that he should come in quickly. Tondal did not lose his composure and said that he was quite quick-witted. The judge asked who the two men who had come with Tondal were, and he replied that they were brothers whom he served. The judge waved him off and told him to get to the point, asking what had brought Tondal to him. Tondal politely asked for their brothers to be released, and the judge asked why on earth he would do that. Tondal said he would forgive his debt, and the judge asked if his life was really worth a couple of prison terms. Tondal suggested adding something else to all this. He offered to add himself to the deal, realizing what the judge wanted. A busy man like him would not arrange all this for a couple of bandits. He needed a business partner. Du understood. The judge replied that he really liked guys who were quick on the uptake. He was glad that Tondal wouldn't need a long explanation. The criminals were released, every single one of them. They asked Vanchal what it all meant, and he said he had made a deal with the judge. Everyone was stunned that he had spoken not to the prison guards, but directly to the district judge. Tondal let Vanchal brag, because a protruding nail gets bitten off quickly, and it's better to build a relationship of trust. The judge said that this would be in payment for his life. He hoped to soon see confirmation of what Tondal had said about the partnership. Tondal smiled and told the judge to wait eagerly. Then he went to the Black Dragon community, not expecting it himself. He did not think that his desire to drink with the community leader would be fulfilled so quickly. The leader joked that he should look at his nose, which was now crooked to the left after being hit, and Tondal offered to fix it. The leader barked, asking if that was why Tondal had come, since they had agreed to a truce. Du explained that now was the time to end the hostility. He asked about yesterday's news about the raid, where only the tigers were released and not the dragons. The leader wondered if it was Tondal's doing, if he had bribed someone. Tondal asked him to think about who would need to be bribed to release them all so quickly. The leader guessed that Du had bribed the district judge, which came as a huge surprise. Tondal offered to help rescue the members of the Black Dragon, and the leader was surprised at why he would offer such a service. Tondal smiled and said that he should not think that it was just a favor. He openly demonstrated his connections with the judge. For the Black Dragon community, the most formidable enemy is the government. This meant that the Black Dragon community would have to bow down obediently. The leader said he had to discuss it with his elders. Tondal replied that he knew the guy and that he wasn't very patient. The leader had better hurry up with the discussions and give an answer quickly. Tondal appeared in court with a bag full of taels, forcing everyone to pay attention to him. There were 100 taels in the bag. No wonder the Black Dragon had subjugated the whole of Hangzhou. He readily offered 100 taels not just for the sake of it, but for the sake of his subordinates. Tondal could turn out to be a swindler. The leader of the Red Tiger was offended by the incident with Master Chan, so he didn't give Tondal a penny. Tondal calmly announced his return to the judge, and the hall fell silent in anticipation. The judge smiled and said that finally a potential business partner had returned. Tondal smiled wryly. They didn't even offer him tea. The judge coldly reminded him that this was no time for trifles. Tondal confidently declared that he had 100 taels of silver with him, confirming his seriousness. The judge asked in surprise if this concerned him, and Tondal replied confidently that it was in exchange for the release of the Black Dragon. Tondal mockingly remarked that it was high time for the judge to sell out, because the longer he waited, the more he would lose. The judge replied with a smile that there was some truth in Tondal's words, but he was afraid of choking on too big a piece. Tondal declared that this money was only the beginning and that he would become the judge's main supplier. The judge asked if Tondal was going to supply him with bribes, to which he replied that he would arrange everything for him. Tondal promised that to outsiders the judge would be an incorruptible official on a single salary, a model citizen. The judge asked about the money being intercepted, but Tondal assured him that a couple of tiles was nothing compared to the future power over Hangzhou. The judge was skeptical. Did Tondal really have such ambitions to lead the criminal world? Tondal sarcastically replied that a potential partner of the district judge could only have such ambitions. The judge warned that if he became Tondal's enemy, the nights in Hangzhou would turn into an endless nightmare for him. As promised, the Black Dragon gangsters were released, laying the foundation for the relationship between Tondal and the judge. The Black Dragon community requested a truce, offering a tavern and a gambling house, and the negotiations went smoothly. Elder Han exclaimed joyfully, welcoming Tondal as the great leader of the Du. Tondal asked what had happened. Khan happily replied that the amulet inscribed for his daughter-in-law had helped her get pregnant. Khan thanked Tondal, acknowledging his tremendous help, and he modestly replied that it was all thanks to his daughter-in-law's sincerity. Now, Tondal's position within the Red Tiger community is solid, and not only the people but also the elders trust him. The only problem is the community leader, who dislikes Tondal, but that doesn't matter. He had originally planned to get rid of the leader in order to climb to the top. Suddenly, one of his subordinates ran in, shouting that Guan Boyan had been attacked. He shouted that Guan had a broken shin and had been hit on the head. Obviously, it was that madman attacking their people. Tondal said he was crazy and asked where Boyan was now. Tondal came to Guan, who told him that judging by the lower half of his face, he was still a youngster. He seemed to be about the same age as the leader do. Tondal asked if he had used a wooden sword. Guan said yes, that he had drawn his sword, but he was no match for him. Everything happened so fast that he ended up on the ground. Tondal asked if Guan thought he would defeat him next time, and Guan replied that he would call Tondal. Judging by memories from a past life, about 10 members of the Red Tiger and Black Dragon would suffer. No matter how you look at it, he is clearly a warrior, perhaps just a vigilante who harbors a grudge against the community. Someone called out to Tondal, drawing his attention to urgent news. Tondal turned around and met the gaze of a stranger who clearly wanted to say something. The stranger directly challenged Tondal to a duel, demanding to fight him. Tondal asked the reason for their fight, thinking he had a right to know. The stranger said he was just a bandit who deserved a good beating. Tondal thought that he was deliberately lowering his voice, but he could clearly see how young he was. If he didn't attack from the bushes, he's not a killer. There was only one problem. This guy was much stronger than Tondal, and Du knew it and was worried about it. The stranger took a fighting stance, preparing for a decisive confrontation with Tondal. Tondal noticed that there were more suitable places for wandering warriors to imitate than here. The stranger demanded that Tondal draw his weapon, preparing for battle. Tondal smoothly drew his blade, preparing to fight the stranger. Tondal thought to himself, is he afraid? Why be nervous in front of a bandit with a knife when you have such skills? The stranger took a deep breath, as if preparing for a decisive move in the fight. He suddenly rushed into the attack, trying to catch Tondal off guard. A fierce battle ensued between Tondal and the stranger, each landing precise blows. Tondal thought that he had only seen such speed in Chan Yuso, a truly rare skill. It was difficult to swing a wooden sword in the narrow alley, but his skills allowed him to overcome any limitations. However, even with his skills, the space restricted his movements. The slightest mistake could cost him dearly. The stranger was puzzled. Tondal moved confidently and precisely, as if the alley were his arena. The stranger contemptuously remarked that Tondal was a coward, hiding behind narrow spaces and tricks. He did not stop, continuing to strike blow after blow, trying to break through Tondal's defense. Tondal noted to himself that the stranger was still inexperienced. He struck quickly, but too predictably. Tondal swung sharply and, with one precise movement, knocked the stranger's hat off, causing him to stagger back. The hat fell silently to the dusty ground, a symbol of lost advantage. The stranger did not expect such a maneuver. His eyes widened with surprise and anger. Tondal thought he had failed to get his opponent, although he could have hooked him before he got used to his surroundings. Tondal wondered what had happened to the stranger's face, which surprised him. The stranger swung but missed, unable to strike Tondal. Tondal noticed that the stranger's blows were becoming less accurate and weaker. The fight continued, each opponent looking for weaknesses and new opportunities to attack. Tondal delivered a powerful kick, trying to knock his opponent off balance. His opponent lost his balance and collapsed to the ground under the force of Tondal's blow. The stranger cursed furiously as he lay on the ground after Tondal's blow. Tondal held his blade to the stranger's face, making it clear that the fight was over. Tondal coldly demanded that the stranger give his name and the purpose of the meeting. The stranger introduced himself as Namgung Cheol-hyun, saying his name with firm determination. Tondal was surprised to realize that he knew this man, not expecting to meet him here. Tondal remembered that the stranger was an important figure from his past life, and apparently his present life as well. Tondal asked with interest if the stranger was the young master of the Namgung clan. The stranger remained silent, and Tondal took this as consent, asking why he was here. He replied that he was gaining combat experience. He wanted to gain experience, so he was running around the back streets looking for enemies of the people. Tondal asked mockingly if the stranger thought that beating up a couple of vagrants would rid him of his fears. The stranger was surprised. Compared to criminal communities, the Namgun clan was like heaven and earth. In their past lives, their paths had never crossed. Tondal asked Namgun again if he wanted to overcome his fear. Tondal came to his office and asked how things were going. His subordinates replied that thanks to him, there was nothing to worry about. Tondal asked them to change Namgun's clothes. They thought he was new and laughed, saying that he was not badly scratched. The old men told Tondal that he had lost a lot of weight and needed to eat 3 times a day. The girls offered him apples, saying that he should at least eat that, and everyone took care of him. Namgun asked if gang communities weren't just a bunch of parasites who reveled in people's suffering. Tondal sarcastically remarked that he was surprised that people treated a bandit this way. Tondal waved it off, saying that it didn't matter anymore. They sat down at the table. Namgung asked how Tondal would help him overcome his fear, and Tondal said that only the dead have nothing to fear. Namgun didn't find it funny. No one knows that he is a coward. He hides it, but at the tournament of orthodox sex, everything comes to light. The Dragon and Phoenix tournament. Tondal asked if they used wooden swords, didn't they? Wooden swords are like real ones, Namgun explained. 2 years ago, he didn't participate because of illness, but now he has to. Tondal said he needed to be on the brink of death. He believed that this would help him overcome his fear, as he knew from having gone through dozens of life-threatening situations. Namgung asked how someone his age could have been through so many situations, and whether the criminal world was really that dangerous. Tondal said he couldn't promise that the fear would disappear. There were no guarantees. Namgun said that he would risk his life because his fear made his life more frightening than death. They went to the doctor, who was upset that he saw Tondal so often. But Du joked that underground doctors did not appeal to him. The doctor said it was pity and asked if this was a new patient. Tondal ordered him to call him a friend. Tondal asked if they got hurt. To patch them up, they would go to the backyard and gave the doctor money. The doctor said that he would soon be rich and would be inside, so if anything happened, they should call him. Namgung said he had never used a short blade before, and Tondal explained that he would have to learn. Tondal ordered them to get ready, and they began. Namgung asked if this would rid him of his fear. Tondal replied that he did not know for sure, but trusted his own experience. Tondal announced the start of the fight and immediately attacked Namgung. His body froze at Tondal's murderous intent and the blade in his hands. It was always like this. Fear paralyzed him. With one swift movement of his blade, Tondal cut Namgun, landing a precise blow. Blood flowed from Namgun's wound, contrasting sharply with his skin. Namgun shouted sharply at Tondal, trying to stop his attack. Tondal stopped. Namgun said he couldn't go on like this. Tondal replied that they could stop everything if Namgun regretted what he had started. The wounds would heal, and they would go their separate ways. Namgun continued that they would never meet again. It's impossible to get used to this in a couple of days, and until he overcomes this barrier, he will be afraid, said Tondal. Namgun gathered his strength and was ready for the trials ahead. He confidently took the blade in his hands, preparing for the decisive moment. He rose from the ground and defiantly suggested starting all over again. Tondal declared that he would not retreat unless his opponent did, making his intentions clear. Namgun swore that he would only let the enemy pass over his dead body. Under the moonlight, the dance between Namgung Chelhuan and Tondal continued for 10 days straight. He firmly stated that escape was equal to death. Retreat was unbearable for him. His eyes showed determination. Fate could not be avoided, and he was ready to face it head-on. Escape is equivalent to death, and the hero accepts the inevitable. He accepted the inevitable and boldly stepped toward his fate. Namgun almost cut Tondal's throat in a swift and dangerous movement. Tondal jumped back, full of fear and caution. If he had hesitated even a little, his throat would have been slit. As expected of Lord Namgung, his skills have grown stronger over time, making it difficult to continue the contest. When he first attacked Tondal, he was so confused that he dropped his sword, but now he acts without hesitation. He is ready to both receive and inflict wounds. It is the determined gaze of a warrior. Tondal asked him to stop because he could be seriously injured. Namgun said that he was covered in cuts, while Tondal did not have a scratch on him. Tondal said that he was a coward because he was a bandit. Tondal put an end to it, saying that tomorrow is the last day and he can't help anymore. Namgung asked in surprise if he had really overcome his fears. Tondal replied that he thought there was one last test left for him in Hangzhou. Namgung asked again what it was. Tondal said that he would find out everything tomorrow, and that he should come to wherever he told him to go. It is an honor to meet the young master of the noble Namgung family. Namgung heard that Chan was a hidden master, but he modestly admitted that he was just a bandit trying to survive. Namgung noticed an unusual aura in Chan that set him apart from the rest. Could there really be so many hidden masters like Tondal in the criminal world? Tondal thanked Chan, but Chan said that he should be the one to thank him for being a worthy opponent. This was the final test to overcome fear. A real sword match with Chan Yusum. It won't be easy. They concentrated intently as they prepared for the upcoming battle. Tondal thought that Cheol Hyun was very serious. The pressure was intense, not at all like fighting with a regular sword, and his opponent was a little-known master. If he recklessly rushes into the attack, the consequences could be dire. Master Chan still managed to wound Namgun with his precise strike. Namgun was the first to break down because he was wounded in battle. He got up and resolutely continued the fight despite his injury. They fought fiercely, sparing no effort or emotion. They were evenly matched. Tondal thought that the two were evenly matched and did not regret arranging the fight between them. Chan Yuso's skills are impressive. He fights on equal terms with the young master from the famous Namgun family. Each of his movements is dangerous, sharp, and deadly. Just a second of hesitation could determine the outcome of the battle. Master Chan stuck his sword into the ground, indicating that he would not fight anymore. He said it was best to stop there, and Namgung was surprised by this outcome. Master Chan said he could have continued indefinitely, but he did not want to create a cause for regret. Everyone present understood this without needing to say it. Namgung bowed and said that he was greatly indebted to Master Chan. He had overcome all his fears and could now move forward with new strength. Namgung left Hangzhou, leaving the city behind and moving on to new challenges. He said goodbye to Tondal and felt such regret for the first time as he left the city. Namgung said that if he ever found himself in their city, he should come to the Namgung house, where he would be welcomed as an honored guest. Namgung gave Tondal a talisman and asked if they would be friends. Tondal asked how his family would feel about him being friends with a bandit. Namgung laughed quietly, not hiding the irony in his gaze. Then he said it didn't matter, as he would soon be the head of the family anyway. A couple of days after Cheol Hyun's return, just when Tondal thought all issues had been resolved, Brother Wangchul announced that Tondal was to be appointed deputy leader of Seiyun. Tondal was stunned. The community leader recognized him, but Tondal believed that he had finally decided to rein them in. Previously, the leader was So Bonsok, but now he is at headquarters, and Chan Chongbai, who was the coordinator, has taken his place. It was Chan Chongbai who helped get Tondal into the military service program. Tondal believed that the community leader had something in mind to divide them from Wangchul and train Tondal. He said that this was a good opportunity, that their leader had decided to put things in order. He planned to get rid of him one fine day, but it seems that he himself hastened the process. Van Schill asked if Tondal was really planning a rebellion, and he said not to be surprised, as if he didn't know. Tondal ordered Brayton to just keep doing his job, and once he was done, he would let him know. He wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to eliminate both the community leader and Chan Zhongbai. The mind-reading skill that would make Chan a strategist in the criminal world in the future, Tondal would do it sooner. The community leader believed that Du Tondal's arrogance was beyond the pale. He absolutely must put Tondal in his place. Chan Zhongbei reassured him, saying that whether he flies or crawls, he is still a puppy. He told the leader not to worry, he would hammer that into Tondal's head. If the leader himself feared him, he had to crush him from the very beginning. Tondal bowed, pretending to be respectful, and greeted him. He said it was an honor for him to serve the honorable leader of Chan's unit. Chan said that he was thick-skinned, but clearly not stupid, and Tondal did not lose his composure, saying that both would be beneficial. Chan said that he had become deputy leader of the unit at 18, and that those around him were unlikely to be pleased. He would have to try to butter them up with his skills, and the pay was 100 taels of silver per month. Chan said that Tondal had been acting cocky lately, so this shouldn't be a problem. Chan asked if Tondal would be satisfied with such instructions for a start. Tondal asked if Chan's younger brother had been arrested for raising his hand against a courtesan. Chan was surprised to hear that he knew about it. Tondal said he could get him out legally and without any problems and would bring 100 taels as a bonus. In his past life, Tondal was terrified of Chan Chongbai. He was a cruel man and meticulous to a fault, cheating the members of the community more than his conscience would allow. Tondal had planned to take him down one way or another, but now he had dug his own grave. Tondal decided to suck up to him until he got his mind-reading technique. Several days passed. The Hanshu quarries were given permission to start developing a coal mine. All the prominent trade guilds in the area gathered in Hangzhou to obtain excavation rights. This is the deputy leader of the Gansen B Dongchul Trade Guild. Tondal thought that 100 taels of silver was a stroke of luck that an ordinary bandit would never see in his lifetime. He just sits here and the bribes keep pouring in. Why? Because they knew very well that Tondal was their only access to the district judge. He asked Tondal to put in a good word with the magistrate for the right to develop the mine. Tondal objected that such an amount was not enough and told him not to think he was some kind of beggar. Tondal told him not to disappoint him next time and that he didn't have much time. Tondal appeared before the judge, ready to talk about Chan's brother. The judge was strongly opposed because the man had beaten the woman so badly that she was partially paralyzed. The judge was outraged, wondering if he should really let such a person go, wondering if his judgments about Tondal were wrong. Tondal promised to settle the matter in another way, but for now he had to curry favor with the leader, Chan. The judge asked if Tondal was suggesting that the criminal be handed over to vigilante justice, and Tondal confirmed this. And then the courts will be flooded with petitions? Tondal laughed. The woman will be humiliated even more. He deserved to have his balls cut off. The judge asked if Tondal was sure he could play the role of a vigilante properly. Tondal replied that he would get the full treatment, so the judge needn't worry. The judge asked if Tondal had come empty-handed to ask for this. Tondal said that he should come to the stairway to heaven today, as he had already prepared everything necessary for him. Magistrate Sobikwan arrived at the brothel in the evening. He happily announced that they had a lot of people today. Baek Dongchul said that this was true. It seemed that Sagi was of exceptional quality, and that Do had foolishly refused 100 taels. So Baek Guan only wanted to buy the judge for his own peace of mind, but 6 ministers were enough for him. He just needed to persuade Tondal. The madam of the house approached and greeted Mr. Bei with joy. He thought she was very beautiful and as lovely as ever. He said that if she would sit with him for just a minute, he would come here every day. She apologized and said that she had another important matter to attend to today. Mr. Bei asked what business it was, whether she was personally entertaining a guest. Everyone knew that Yun Jae-yeon never served men who flew out the door because they desired her. Everyone was surprised and curious to know who had managed to get her. Then Tondal and the judge arrived, and the judge asked the official so what he was doing there. The official did not expect to see him and could not even utter a word. The judge said that he did not expect to see him and asked if he had been released early. The official began to justify himself, saying that he had finished his business. The judge joked that the drinks were expensive here, or that the official had gotten mixed up with a courtesan, and the official replied that he had simply decided to look around. The judge wished him well and moved on. The official began calling out to the guests, and Yeon Ji-yeon began to laugh. Baek Dong-chul and So were puzzled. Were Tondal and the judge so close that they went to a brothel together and were served by Yeon Ji-yeon? Tondal overheard their conversation and gave them a cold, sidelong glance. He thought to himself, "It looks like they're going to squeeze every last drop out of me." Everyone sat down at the table, and the girl began to play beautiful music. The judge said he really enjoyed the performance, and that Yeon Ji-yeon had prepared the best staff. The judge laughed, wondering if it was all for Tondal's sake, and Yeon Ji-yeon asked him not to joke like that. The judge asked Tondal if it was true that he had psychic abilities. Yeon Jae-young was surprised that the deputy leader of the unit had such talents. The judge asked him to predict his future, and Tondal saw that he would have great success after failure. The judge inquired about the nature of the setback, and Tondal responded that it would involve a confrontation with those who had caused trouble on the day of their meeting. The judge thought that Tondal meant that their meeting was a blessing and would lead to great success. Tondal became conceited, thinking it was obvious, and the judge laughed, wondering where the young bandit got so much pride. Then he agreed and said that if he succeeded, it would only be thanks to Do, and decided to drink to that. Tondal woke up feeling slightly confused and heavy-headed. Looking around, he was surprised to find himself lying in bed with Yeon Ji-young. That's how it all ended. The unexpected finale caught them off guard. They exchanged glances and both thought, embarrassed, what a turn of events. Yeon Ji-young asked if Tondal would take responsibility. She asked if Tondal would like a drink to sober up. Then she suggested that maybe they could continue what they had been doing yesterday. Tondal remained in a state of being stuck between sleep and reality. Almost the entire day passed before he was able to come to his senses. The community leader greeted Tondal with a hug, very happy to see him. He was told that his brother would be released, but he did not understand how Tondal had managed to do this. Tondal replied that a way would be found. Tondal brought him the promised 100 tills, and the leader was surprised. He thought that Tondal was simply something special and changed his mind about clipping his wings, deciding instead to make them his own. He asked Tondal if he wanted to rise even higher. He offered to make him his man and raise him to the top. Tondal was pleased with his words. He heard what he wanted to hear in them. He said he would serve him like a brother. For a whole month of service in the Saiyan unit, Tondal was Chongbei's loyal dog. His days were filled with harsh orders and dangerous assignments. The main task was to deal with those who refused to pay for protection. He carried out all orders without hesitation, sparing no one in his path. This is how Tondal earned respect and fear in this harsh world. He came just to talk, but the elder refused. Tondal warned him that the conversation would be in the language of weapons. Of course, Tondal used his own methods, not the ones Chan Chongbei was expecting. Tondal asked the elder, the owner of the slaughterhouse, why he did not pay for protection. The elder shouted that they would defend themselves and had no intention of feeding the Red Tiger community for nothing. Tondal asked, what if things weren't so simple? The elder replied, won't you create a threat in order to protect yourselves? Tondal said that he did not promise a threat, but his business partners would. Tondal asked about the magistrate, saying it was a very good catch. Using the magistrate's power, they could expand their customer base and demand payment in return. The method of mutually beneficial cooperation is always valuable. Civilians would not suffer, and his reputation would grow. Everyone gathered in Chang Cheon-bei's office. One person collected the missing taxes, but only Tondal was praised. Cheon-bei yelled at the others and said they should learn from Tondal, but Tondal replied that they lacked experience. Cheon-bei ordered Tondal to go home and rest, and he thanked him. Tondal thought that the time had come. There was nowhere left to retreat. It was time to deal with Chan Sobek, Tondal thought, clenching his fists. He thought about cutting off his balls and hanging them in a prominent place, but decided it would be better to throw him in a ditch. Tondal had heard that he frequented the local taverns, but finding him would not be so easy. Suddenly, Tondal heard someone yelling at a prostitute that he wasn't fooling anyone. Tondal thought there was only one reason why a pretty babe would be out so late. Tondal recognized Chan Sobek and thought that he hadn't even had time to get out of jail before he was already chasing skirts. The girl was wearing a blue uniform and carrying a sword, which meant she was a warrior, not a prostitute. Chan told her that if she tried to make a sound, he would gouge her eyes out. The warrior was not afraid and punched him in the face. The girl hit Chan so hard that she knocked out his teeth and he collapsed to the ground. Tondal watched what was happening from around the corner and thought that if he died, there would be trouble. The blame would fall on Tondal. The girl continued on and shouted that Chan was dead. Tondal ran up to her and managed to stop the warrior from killing Chan. The warrior asked who he was, and Tondal explained that he was a bandit passing by and asked her not to continue. The girl asked Tondal if he and Chan Sobek were friends. Then the warrior saw the amulet Namgun had given Tondal on his sword. The girl asked where Tondal got this jade amulet. Before Tondal could answer, the warrior struck him and he lost consciousness. Tondal woke up breathing heavily and trying to understand where he was. He realized that he was tied to a chair and paralyzed. She had found his mahou points. Tondal asked what it all meant, but the girl only muttered that he had finally woken up. The girl ordered him to answer where he got the amulet, and Tondal replied that it was a gift from a friend. The girl was indignant, asking why a warrior like Namgun would be friends with such scum. Tondal asked if she was Cholyun's sister. She became irritated and struck Tondal in the face, telling him to stick to the point. Then she ordered him to explain how he got her brother's amulet. Tondal could not reveal Cholyun's secret, so he asked the girl if she was afraid of the consequences of her actions. She asked furiously if Tondal would threaten her again, and Du asked what she would do if she had given him the amulet willingly. The girl was indignant, and Tondal had no intention of answering, so she told him not to worry. Tondal would soon appear before the Namgung family in person. She wanted to see if he would be so calm there. Tondal thought irritably that things were not going well, that he was in deep trouble. Junghyun had indeed overcome his fear. He fought and was no longer a coward. All this was thanks to Tondal, and he was very glad to have met him. Would Tondal accept his invitation to the martial arts tournament? He had 3 days left before returning home. They arrived at the Namgung estate, where Namgung Baekchong, the clan leader, was already waiting for them. He asked the girl if she had caught that jerk in Hachu. The clan leader asked her if she had found out the location of Cheol-hyun, but the girl said she had not been able to. Tondal exclaimed that he was endlessly repeating the truth to her, and she ordered him to shut up. The clan leader asked Tondal if he knew what the talisman was, and Tondal said he only found out on his way to them. The leader did not believe that they were close friends, and even if they were, he would never have given away this amulet. Tondal said it was just a simple trinket from a friend and was kicked for it. Tondal fell, and the girl exclaimed that she had told him not to talk nonsense about friends. Tondal said that he had seen a lot in his life, but he had never seen such nonsense. Then he added that they should finally decide what they wanted from him. The clan leader said that words seemed to be useless and ordered Tondal to be put in prison. 3 days later, Cholyun returned and was greeted with joy. Cholyun modestly said that such loud greetings were not necessary, and they asked him where he had been. He said he had simply been traveling, but the servants told him that there had been a great commotion at the estate. Cholyun laughed, saying that his father had probably already prepared some kind of punishment for him. The servants said that the lady had caught a young man who had a jade amulet. Cholyun asked again if it was the man with his amulet, and the servants said yes and asked if he had been robbed because he was a bandit. Cholyun asked how he had introduced himself, and the servant said something like, "Do." His sister saw her brother and ran to him joyfully, shouting that he had returned. Cholyun was not happy. He was interested in the matter with Tondal. Solren said that Do had assured her that his brother had given him the amulet and that they were friends, but she thought that was impossible. Solren added that the executioner was interrogating him right now. Cholyun became angry, filled with rage, and called Solren a stupid girl. She did not expect such words and such a reaction from her brother, and she could not even speak properly. He said that Tondal was his friend, and that the amulet was a symbol of their friendship, that he had promised that he would be accepted into their home. Then he asked how long Tondal had been at the estate, and his sister replied that it had been 3 days. If he had been tortured for 3 days, there would be nothing left of him. Cholyun immediately ran to the dungeon. The guards greeted the master and said that he could not enter yet, but he pushed them aside and went in. He ran up the stairs headlong, begging them to let him in before it was too late. He hoped that Tondal was alive, and then he opened the door and saw him. He saw Tondal and shouted to him, hoping he would respond. Yes, he heard Tondal's last breaths and ran to him. He was hanging, chained to the wall, covered in blood, with no part of his body left untouched, especially his hands. Tondal was even able to recognize Cholyun and say that he was a shit-eater. The leader of the estate apologized to Chol Hyon, saying that they had made a big mistake. The sister blamed herself, saying it was reckless. She didn't believe Tondal's words. Dr. Huan approached them, and they immediately turned to him, wanting to know the results. The doctor said that the scars would remain, but healing his wounds would not be a problem. But his acupuncture points had been sealed for too long, 3 whole days. It will be quite difficult to save both hands, said the doctor, upsetting everyone. Cholyun demanded that he be healed at any cost, saying he would get whatever herbs were needed. The doctor said that his muscles and large meridians could still be saved, but the small meridians were dead. Cholyun fell to his knees, overcome with despair and helplessness. He cried out in the night, pouring out all his pain and hopelessness. The leader came to Tondal and explained that his hands could not be restored, and he asked for forgiveness for this. It turned out that Tondal was now crippled, and once again, he was overcome with fear and disappointment. The leader said that the Namgun clan would provide him with any compensation he wanted. But Tondal didn't want anything, no money, only his hands. Tondal was furious, shouting that all he wanted were his damn hands. The leader desperately told Tondal to rest and think about everything. Tondal lay there and thought that fate was cruel, first crippling him with his leg and now his hands. Cholyun came into his room, feeling very ashamed of everything that had happened. He apologized to Tondal with regret and sincere remorse, but words would not help. Tondal said that he didn't need to take any responsibility. Just say he was sorry, and that was all. But Chol Hyun got angry and picked up a sword, shouting that he would take responsibility. He might not be able to give Tandal his hands back, but he wanted to atone for his guilt by cutting off his own. He pointed the sword at himself and apologized again, saying he was very sorry. Then his sister ran up and knocked the sword out of Cholhen's hands. She stopped him, but Cholhen was persistent and ordered her to leave. His sister said that if hands had to be cut off, let them cut hers off, for the fault was not hers. Tondal intervened in their argument, asking why they should cut off their hands since they couldn't sew new ones on. Then he asked for a carriage to be brought to him, as he wanted to return to Hangzhou. His sister asked if he could get some more treatment, but Tondal was against it and ordered the carriage to be brought immediately. Then he asked his sister if it would make him feel better if he killed her. She threw the sword with all her might and in rage or anger shouted Tondal's name. She covered her face with her hands and began to cry bitterly, very bitterly, calling herself an idiot. She thought she had to atone for her guilt at any cost. Tondal walked and thought that everything was very bad, that he even wanted to end it all. If the fact that he was crippled came to light, all his efforts would be wasted. Until that happened, he had to push forward with the plan as much as possible. He kicked the door open and began begging the doctor to fix his hands. Despite the surprise, the doctor reacted very calmly, continuing to drink his tea. Then he smiled slightly and thought that Tondal was still alive. At the Namgun estate, an argument broke out between the leader and Cholhen. The leader shouted that Cholhyun had gone mad and was talking complete nonsense. Cholhyun wanted to go to Hangzhou and become Tondal's right-hand man, considering it the only way out. The leader considered Tondal a villain and said that there could be no question of honor if we responded to them with kindness. Then their sister got involved in their argument and said that her brother was right. They turned around and saw her wearing a mask and a hat that completely covered her face. Cholhen asked in surprise, "Is that Solren?" She said that it was not her brother who should become the master, but her, as she was to blame for this misfortune. Solren resolutely took the blade and cut off her hair. Her hair fell to the floor, and she said that from now on, Namgung Solren was dead. The doctor carefully examined Tondal's hands and said that it would be difficult. Tondal asked the doctor if even he was unable to cure them, and he replied that it was an illness but not a death sentence. Tondal hoped that there was still a way, but the doctor explained that he should not expect too much. Otherwise, he might be disappointed. Tondal threatened that if he did not cure him, he would die. The doctor said that there was no one else who could treat Lady Sun. He explained that the treatment would not be quick. Tondal was willing to pay all the expenses. The doctor said that it was unlikely that Tondal would be able to pay for everything he asked for. Tondal asked that everything be within reasonable limits. He went to his leader, who furiously asked what had happened. Tondal replied that he had almost come back from the dead. The leader asked what kind of woman had killed his brother and disappeared with Tondal. Tondal did not know about his brother's death. Tondal said he was sorry. He thought he had stopped her. The leader did not hold it against him. He was not to blame. But what about his hands? Tondal explained that the same person had done this to him. The leader was angry and asked who this bitch was. He would tear her arms and legs off. Tondal said that she was the daughter of the Namgun clan. The leader was stunned. His brother had died for hitting Solren, and this had happened to Tondal when he tried to stop her. The leader cut him off, saying that his brother had dug his own grave, and ordered Tondal to rest as he had been badly injured. After Tondal left, the leader reflected that he had wanted to keep him by his side, but now he was crippled and of no use to him. He thought that it didn't matter anymore, because he had received a treasure more valuable than Tondal. He had received a valuable book on the technique of reading minds, ancient knowledge hidden from many. Tondal came to Master Chan and told him everything, and he couldn't believe his ears. Tondal said that he had gotten himself into such a mess and that everything had turned out this way. Chan was outraged at such outrageous behavior. Tondal confidently said that he would survive because all gangsters have a history. In any case, he couldn't engage in physical activity, and getting the Book of Thoughts was more important than ever. But he wouldn't give it up so easily, so they would have to kidnap him and torture him. Master Chan offered to become his bodyguard. Tondal was pleased, even if it was just words, but the master insisted that he was serious. Someone approached them quietly. It turned out to be Solyan. Tondal said he would be back in a minute and quickly disappeared from view. Master Chan asked the girl who she was and what she was doing there. She stood firmly, not moving from the spot, as if rooted to the ground. She explained that she had come to see Master Do, and Chan asked what she wanted from Do. Then Tandal intervened and ordered her to leave. Chan glanced at her sideways, hiding his true thoughts. The girl bowed to Tandal and said that she had come to become his hands. Tandal asked her to repeat herself, and she said that this was the only way she could atone for her sin. Tandal asked what kind of appearance she had, and she replied that she had renounced her name, her family, and even her face. If it came out that Namgung's daughter had become a gangster's accomplice, it would be a disgrace that would be difficult to bear. Tondal asked if it might be worth spreading rumors that their son was a coward and that Du had helped him, but in return had been crippled. The girl was ready to obey any of Tondal's wishes. She would not leave him as long as he still had orders. Chan asked if she was capable of protecting Do's deputy. The girl replied that she could do it alone, and Chan would accept her resignation if she was stronger than him. The girl said that he did not know who she was and was still recklessly challenging her. Chan knew who she was, and the girl said that knowing this, he was asking for a duel. Chan explained that she had misunderstood. He stated that it was not a duel, he just wanted to finish her off. She asked why. The master replied that if someone had taken away her father's hands, wouldn't she have done the same? She agreed that he was right, but she did not have the right to die yet. Chan said that the hands had not been given the right and asked if the hands could swing a sword without the will of their master. The girl was confused. She didn't know what to say in response. Then she gathered herself and asked Tondal if she could join the fight. But he replied that he had not yet recognized her, so she was not his hands and she could do as she wished. She declared that she would earn Tondal's recognition and began to draw her sword. How strong could an ordinary bandit be, she thought. He was just a puppy who didn't know the horrors of the world of martial arts. They began to fight, leaving no chance for mercy. Chan shouted that she believed she had only sinned against the leader Du, but she had hurt everyone who cared about him. Master Chan was furious and said he would make her pay for this crime. They fought evenly, neither yielding in speed or strength. The girl wondered why a warrior of such caliber was wasting away in the criminal world. Master Chan thought that this was not an opponent he could fight at full strength. He decided to raise his chi level to exceed his capabilities. Tonal intervened and stopped them, preventing the fight from going too far. He explained that if they continued, someone would inevitably get hurt. He ordered the girl to follow him, leaving her no choice. He decided to test her usefulness in practice, since she had decided to become his hands. Tondal hoped that the girl would not take back her words. The girl replied that this was exactly what she had hoped for from the very beginning. Brother Vanchel was very happy. He did not believe that Tondal could die, as he was not the type to die just like that. He asked Do who was behind him, and Tondal explained that it was the one who had caused his hands to be in such a state. Vanchel got angry and called her a beast, and Tondal said that she would now replace his hands. Vanchel asked how she could replace his hands. Tondal said she would feed him, wash him, and so on. Brother Vanchel joked, asking if she would spank him too. Tondal said that enough was enough, and Vanchel asked how long it had been since he had seen the mistress Yan. Tondal replied that he hadn't seen her since then, and Vanchel scolded him, saying that he was a fool and should have gone to her. She had been running around looking for Tondal, even coming to Vanchel and crying. Vanchel told Tondal to go to her right away, but he refused, saying he had a lot of work to do. Vanchel said that a gangster is a gangster, and a man's success depends only on a woman. He pushed Tondal and told him to hurry up and go to Yeonjeon. Tondal thought it was just a meaningless night between a courtesan and a gangster, but he still felt despicable. He went to Yeonjeon, and she calmly said that she had heard that he had returned yesterday. Tondal justified himself by saying that he had business that he could not postpone. The hostess was angry, holding back a storm of emotions behind a cold gaze. The man behind Yeon told her that Tondal was the villain who had turned the deputy leader's hands into this. The mistress approached the girl with an angry and focused gaze. She stopped in front of her, not taking her eyes off her mask. Then she abruptly removed the girl's mask, revealing her true face. Tondal cried out loudly, exclaiming with surprise and alarm. The mistress said that if she had been taught how to cultivate her inner energy, she would have taken revenge herself. The girl stood silently, showing neither fear nor emotion. Tondal asked the mistress not to do this because she would be replacing his hands. The mistress said that she did not particularly like the fact that these hands belonged to a woman. Tondal coolly replied that hands have no gender. Yang said that he could think that, but would the hands think the same way? Tondal thought this conversation was like walking on pins and needles, and he needed to pop in a couple of times before Yeon's anger turned to mercy. At that moment, Chan Baekdong waved his hand and called Tandal over. He asked where Tandal had been, because he had been looking for him for a long time. Tandal asked what had happened. Chan replied that he had asked to be informed if the unit leader started acting strangely. He was staring intently at those around him and asking questions about ancient letters. He had been doing this all day, then went to school and started asking the teacher about the letters. Tandal thought that Chan Jeonbei had finally mastered the technique of reading minds. Tandal thanked Baekdong and said he would buy him some sagija, which made him happy because he would be trying it for the first time. Then Tandal turned to the girl, calling her by name. He said that from now on he was her master and that she should address him accordingly. He told her to hurry up and follow him because they had a lot of work to do. They came to the judge, who looked at Tandal and was very surprised at what he had brought. Tandal said it was a bribe from the Ganson Company, 500 tiles. They cleaned out that company. The judge asked Tandal, who said that he would take care of all the bribes himself. Tandal said that he had to deliver the money personally. Tandal asked if the judge had heard that a new inspector had been appointed to Zhejiang province. The judge asked why him, and Tandal said it was not permanent, he was the deputy governor. Tandal asked to invest 500 taels and take care of him regularly. The judge was indignant, saying that it was obvious what this all meant. He would just loaf around until he retired. Tandal was wary. Did the judge not trust him? The judge asked Tandal fearfully, had he seen something? Tandal laughed, saying that 500 baht was a lot, but later he would think that buying the promotion was profitable. The judge said he had to think about it, then asked who was behind Tandal. Tandal said it was the man who had caused his hands to be in such a state. The judge suggested sentencing her to 100 lashes and 10 years in prison. Tandal refused. Tandal replied that he would come back later and went on his way. The girl thought that Mr. Do must have very powerful connections, as he had received so much attention from influential people. Tandal ordered her not to be distracted by extraneous thoughts and to follow him. She asked where they were going, and Do replied that they were going to take care of the most important part of the plan. They headed to Changwu Zhongbei, preparing for an important task. Chan pondered the book, thinking that Baekdong had found something. He felt nervous and guilty towards Chan Baekdong. After studying the book, he could see through everyone. Then he realized that if that was the case, it must be Tandal's henchman. He started shouting that he had summoned Chan Baekdong 100 years ago, but he still hadn't come. The servants said that he had left, and Zhonbai was indignant as to why it had to be at that very moment when he had called him. He said he had important business at the Guanghua brothel. Zhonbai ordered him to be brought here immediately. He decided to find him himself and went in search of him. He thought that with his mind-reading skills, this street would be no problem for him, but first he would get rid of any potential problems. Before he had time to think it through, someone hit him. Zhonba instantly passed out and collapsed to the ground. It was Tandal in his hands. Tandal said, no offense, but possessing the treasure alone is a crime. Tandal called him to come with him for a moment and dragged him away. Chonba woke up tied to a chair, not realizing where he was. Tandal smiled and remarked that Chongbei had been asleep for a very long time. Chonba called Tandal by name, clearly not expecting to see him. He asked Tandal why he had done this to him, and Tandal replied that he had sinned and must be punished. Chonba shouted furiously, asking by what right he wanted to punish him, that he would not get away with it. He threatened to tear him to pieces when he got out, and Tandal asked how he could get out. Tandal said that Chongbei was naive to think he had a way out. Chonba asked why Tandal wanted to kill him, and he replied that there were many reasons, but he was too lazy to explain them all. Tandal asked where the mind-reading technique book was. Jonba pretended not to know about such a book and asked what mind-reading technique was. Tandal assumed that he didn't want to answer nicely. He gave her 15 minutes and told her to get him to talk. The girl obeyed Tandal's order and promised that everything would be done. She suddenly lunged at Chongbai, unable to contain her rage. Every blow was filled with pain and despair. She couldn't do it in good conscience. One thought echoed in her head. She was no longer a warrior, so she had to do it. Finally, Chongbei shouted that the book was in his office. Tandal ordered the girl to stop, saying, "Enough!" Then Tandal asked Chongbei where exactly in the office the book was. Chonba begged for mercy, saying he would tell them everything. Just don't touch him. Tandal said that if he told them, he would die quickly. Tandal ordered the girl to bear her blade and get ready. He ordered her to cut off this bastard's leg, just above the knee. Tandal said that he would feel all the horror when the blood began to slowly leave his body. Chonbi began to scream loudly, overcome with horror and fear. Then he shouted that the book was in a pull-out drawer. in a hiding place under the third shelf. Tondal was delighted and said that he should have said so right away, then he wouldn't have gone so far. Now the leader, Du Tondal, ordered the girl to kill Chongbei. Chonba begged for mercy, promising to do whatever Tondal ordered. But no one heard his pleas and the girl killed him, and blood spread across the floor. Tondal left and ordered her to clean up, and the girl said it would be done. She stood there with glassy eyes covered in blood, not moving a muscle. In front of her, Tondal silently closed the door and left without looking back. When Tondal stepped outside, he heard the girl begin to vomit. He thought that it must not be easy for Namgung's precious daughter to serve a gangster, but he would be glad if she didn't run away. The events continue the next day at the Seiyun Division. Tondal and the girl were looking for a mind-reading book in the office. She found a cabinet, but it was locked. He ordered her to break it. She obeyed and took out the book. Finally, it was in his hands. This book is a mysterious Talmud, which Tondal regretted most of all, even remembering it on his deathbed. Chan Chongbei seemed almost like a demon to Tondal at the time. He knew everything about his victim, even his secret beliefs. Tondal was very interested in what kind of technique was in there. Tondal was so absorbed in the book that when someone addressed him, he didn't even hear. The girl who was replacing his hands called him and said it was time to sleep. Tondal didn't even notice how time had flown by and that it was already night. He told the girl to go rest as he wasn't going anywhere today. Tondal thought that whoever invented the technique of reading minds was a genius. He had obviously spent his whole life studying people. Reading this book consumes your mind and time completely, but it will take more than one night to comprehend everything. In order to absorb the Red Tiger community, Tondal needs to master the technique as quickly as possible, even if only 30% of it. Tondal was worried and thought that this bastard would show up soon. The head of the elders was shocked by what he heard, and his brother was released from prison. He asked where he was now, and his subordinates said they knew he was in Hangzhou, so the elder ordered them to find him. This was the older brother of the community leader, Cho Huanyong, known as the Ripper, who had been rotting in prison for the last 10 years. If he hadn't been behind bars, he would have been the leader of the community. His brother cursed him, wondering why he didn't just die in prison. He got out and is making people nervous. The leader thought he would just give him pocket money in his old age. Then he suddenly came himself, hitting his brother's servant. He greeted the leader with a smile, saying, "Long time no see, little brother." The leader exclaimed angrily, calling him his older brother in a reproachful voice. The brother said that it was true what they said, that mountains and reefs change over the years, and that he wanted to join the Black Dragon community, but he ordered that he wanted to relax with the guys in a brothel. The leader asked what he wanted him to tell them. The brother replied that they should bring plenty of drinks and pretty girls, free of charge, of course. He laughed and said he hoped he had played king enough, because the true king had returned. He said that the fox must retreat, and Tondal gnaws at the granite of science.